Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei was Son of Spartan with Sekiryuutei and went to Halo World movie. Before we start, please go support Matiaslucifer for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. After a hard life, Issei is prepared to face the threats of the world and make a name for himself and be respected by all. After all, he has Spartan blood and he will be the new Spartan Sekiryuutei. Serious Issei, mercenary, and maybe Issei x Harem. Chapter 1. The deafening noise of a truck, or rather the warthog, crashing into the forward unto Dawn's ship, where two subjects were getting up after their forced landing. And although they wanted to recover from the shock, they didn't have the precious time they needed. They were on one of the Halo rings, which was unfortunately in its final moments of programmed self-destruction, intended to definitively destroy the Flood threat, a parasitic, world-destroying race. Our heroes, the Covenant elite leader, the Arbiter, and Spartan, the Master Chief, were racing to leave the ring before it destroyed everything in its path. Spartan, said the Inquisitor, dodging some boxes that were falling due to the increased gravity from Halo. Go ahead, I have something to do, the Spartan replied, dodging some vehicles being pulled down by gravity as he headed towards the command center. I hope you succeed, Spartan, the Inquisitor said one last time before taking command of the ship. The Spartan nodded at the elite's last words and went to place the chip where the AI artificial intelligence Cortana was, on the ship's launch controls under the pressure of the imminent explosion of the approaching ring. Come on, Cortana, the Spartan thought. Hang on, it's okay, Cortana replies breathlessly. Once the ship's thrusters were activated, the race for survival began between the ship and the explosion of the Halo ring. Unfortunately for the Spartan, as they were exiting the ring, gravity began to take its toll, causing him to lose his balance and fall from the deck to the outer edge. Fortunately, the Master Chief held on tightly to the deck, gripping the metal, and then climbed up to a worried Cortana who thought she had lost her comrade. Chief, Cortana said, worried about the Spartan. Having already dodged the last vehicle debris threatening to fall on his head, the Spartan reached the control post where a lightweight Cortana was waiting. Both were watching the end of the Halo ring self-destruct, displaying a great flash of white light that blinded our heroes as they waited for the ship to move as far away from the ring as possible so as not to be caught in the explosion. If we don't succeed, Cortana whispered worriedly. We will achieve it, the Master Chief replies confidently. Then the whole place began to darken after the big flash, watching as the Halo ring and everything in it began to be destroyed without knowing if they had survived or not. 6 months later. Earth, September 3, 2553. Then the new commander of the Earth Marines was with the leader of the elites, the Arbiter, after his ship. Well, half of his ship had crashed into the ocean. He was the only survivor of the Halo ring explosion. He and the others were in mourning after learning that the other half of the ship, in which Spartan 117, or Master Chief, and Cortana had disappeared from the face of the earth. They were paying their respects to the fallen, both human and Covenant, now that they were at peace after more than centuries of war between the two races. For us the storm has passed, the war is over, but let us never forget those who journeyed into the fleeting darkness and did not return, for their decision required more than courage, sacrifice, and a firm fighting conviction. Our fight was in another life. While we begin the rebuilding, this hillside will remain barren, a memorial to the fallen heroes. They ennobled us all and they must not be forgot. The commander spoke to the guests, who included Marines and elites, along with the Inquisitor, who was also there to honor his former rival comrade. At that moment, the commander gave a military salute, signaling to the captain along with 7 troops lined up with their battle rifles pointing towards the setting sun. Captain, present arms. The captain shouted, prompting the other soldiers to fire the traditional 21-gun salute in homage to the fallen, and all 21 shots were heard throughout the place. The Inquisitor approached the commander as he continued to gaze at the monument to the fallen, which contained photos, flowers, names, codes, and nicknames of men, women, elites, and other heroes who died in the war. I remember how this war began, what your race did to mine. I cannot forgive you, but you have my gratitude for staying by his side until the end. It's hard to think that he's dead, the commander said as they shook hands with the Inquisitor, who accepted the farewell from the human commander. Once everyone had left, the Inquisitor took one last look at the monument of his fallen comrade. It was very easy, the Inquisitor whispered, bidding farewell to Earth as he was transported by the Covenant ship. Now aboard the ship, the elites, free from the tyranny of the Prophet and the threats of the Flood, embarked for their home Sanghelios after centuries of bloodshed by their comrades in senseless, bloody wars. But at last, the moment of peace had arrived for humans and the Covenant, or so it seemed. Meanwhile, in a part of outer space, we found ourselves in a dark place, dimly lit by the starlight and galaxies with their beautiful colors ranging from sky blue to crimson red. There, the wreckage of the ship forward unto dawn wandered, broken in half. It had only left the cargo section containing ammunition for various types of weapons and the remains of vehicles destroyed by the ring's explosion. Apparently, no one had survived such destruction, or so they thought. "Boss, can you hear me?" said a worried woman's voice as she tried to communicate with her boss. That was Cortana's voice making contact with the Spartan to see if he survived the Halo explosion. Then a couple of lights turned on and the Spartan appeared from the gloomy darkness with his helmet lights illuminated the dark interior of the ship. "Cortana," Spartan 117 said, floating in the ship due to the low gravity in space, looking around. "What a relief, I thought I'd lost you too," Cortana said, relieved to see her boss alive. "What happened, Cortana, where are we?" Spartan 117 said, asked, looking out into space and observing some galaxies and what appeared to be planet Earth. "I'm not sure. When Halo triggered its self-destruct sequence, it shattered into thousands of pieces, causing havoc in outer space," but Cortana replied, concerned by what she was seeing. "Tell me, Cortana," the Spartan said seriously, seeing the complicated situation they were in. There was a rupture in space-time due to the destruction of Halo. The portal couldn't maintain itself. We crossed it, but now we're lost, adrift in the rift. The Arbiter was safe because he was transported to the exact coordinates of the base. But we're adrift in the dimensional space-time rift, Cortana explained gravely, describing the situation she and the Master Chief found themselves in. "HMPH, the Spartan grunted as he walked away, taking the chip containing Cortana's AI with him and placing it in the back of his helmet. Once he had finished placing his companion in his armor, the Spartan floated away in the low gravity, heading towards one of the still intact locations where he could rest in one of the cryogenic chambers, so he could rest alongside Cortana. Once in the cryogenic chambers, he placed Cortana in the command post where her hologram appeared, looking at the Spartan. "But you did it, didn't you? The Covenant, the Flood. It's all over," Cortana remarked optimistically. "It's over," the Spartan replied in an exhausted voice, realizing that his mission and his duty as a Spartan were finished. After that, he left the weapons he found there, including marine weapons, human, Odst, and Spartan, and Covenant weapons. He then headed to an activated cryogenic bed to sleep again, just in case he needed them again. "I'll send out a signal, but it will be a while before they find us, maybe years," Cortana explained, realizing they would be lost in the rupture for a long time. The Spartan nodded in agreement with his partner, and before he fell asleep, he looked one last time at his partner and special friend. "When you need me, wake me up," the Spartan said before falling asleep in the cryogenic bed. Cortana nodded sadly as she watched the Spartan asleep again and heard his tired, broken voice. Seeing that his inner fire as an active Spartan had been extinguished, she didn't know what the near future held for him. She looked at the Spartan knowing that she would awaken him someday, but not now. "I'll miss you, John," Cortana said before also resting among the remote's controls. And once again the place turned dark and cold in the shadows of the ruptured space, waiting to see if the distress signal would arrive, whether in days, months, or perhaps years. Without knowing that the future held a long road ahead for both of them, 300 years later. Narrator's POV. More than 3 centuries have passed since they were stranded in outer space, where our heroes remained dormant. Spartan 117 was still cryogenically frozen, and Cortana slept amidst the controls of a destroyed but still usable ship. After wandering through the galaxy and the solar system, they had reached a planet called Earth, a habitable place inhabited by humans. Cortana, having just awakened, took advantage of the fact that in a few minutes they would be entering the stratosphere and then crashing deep into a dense, thick forest where no civilization existed, just a few kilometers from a Japanese city called Kyoto. Cortana, after controlling the ship's forced landing, was deciding whether to wake the Master Chief, but according to what he had asked her to do, only to wake him if he needed to. For now, Cortana decided to wait to see what would happen to both of them in what seemed to be a new world, seeing if there was anyone who could contact them. "But even so, I'll be waiting for the moment you wake up, John." That's what Cortana thought as she continued to stare at the Spartan's cryogenically frozen body. A few weeks later, Issei Hayadu's life has been anything but comforting. From the moment he was a newborn, he never knew the love and affection of his family because his parents died under peculiar circumstances. His father died, or rather was killed, in the war for the good of his country, earning him the designation of KIA Killer in Action. His mother died in childbirth, unable to survive a high-risk pregnancy. He was forced to live in an orphanage in his hometown of Kyoto, where he was welcomed with open arms and given what little affection a child could receive. But as time passed, noticing that no one seemed to want to adopt him because he was already grown up, he began to depress himself to such a degree that he resorted to the most drastic thing he has ever done. Leaving the orphanage without the consent of the few companions and friends he made, and forced to mature by forgetting his childhood because the outside world is harsh and cruel, especially since there were several individuals with bat wings and black wings trying to kill him in thousands of ways. forcing Issei to be more cautious, reserved, and serious when engaging in conversation with someone. The only one he could trust was a certain dragon residing within him. After escaping his 10th assassination attempt, Issei was summoned from within, where he first met his partner, the Red Dragon of Wales, better known as the Sekiryuutei, one of the two great celestial dragons. Issei and Drake, both the dragon and the human, decided to work together to coexist. For example, Drake gave Issei a little improvised and accelerated training so he could master his boosted gear, one of the 13 Longinus in which the dragon resided, at least at a basic level that allowed him to deter his attackers. And Drake also informed his young host of the supernatural world he would be forced to inhabit. Unlike the world he had lived in until recently, the normal world, there was another world unknown to almost all humans, the supernatural. Humans didn't know they coexisted with supernatural beings like angels, fallen angels, demons, yokai, vampires, and gods. For any human, it would be fiction and a lie, but for the one who was part dragon, it was real, according to what his partner Drake told him. And that is why they both decided to work together as partners, companions, friends, training to overcome this darkness he would have to endure, as well as the difficult times that lay ahead in the not-too-distant future. Issei, thanks to the improvised training provided by Drake, quickly learned to evade his pursuers, including masterless demons and fallen angels who sought to kill him or steal his sacred gear for their own sinister purposes. After several failed assassination attempts, Issei and Drake decided to flee the city and hide in the dense forest of Kuo. There, the brown-haired boy was forced to venture into this unknown and dangerous place, facing his pursuers, demons and fallen angels searching for his head and his sacred gear. Deep within the Kuo forests, Issei faced several of his fallen pursuers who were hunting him like bloodhounds, searching for his 9 tails, his head, and his sacred gear at any cost. But Issei didn't make it easy for them. Despite his near inexperience in combat, some improvisation and help from Drake, he managed to ambush them, taking advantage of the dense forest. Forced to take the offensive with Drake's assistance, he unleashed the dragon shot, severely injuring many of his pursuers with the energy blast and killing others who were directly hit. Issei himself wasn't unscathed either. Besides the exhaustion from the attack, the shockwave from the explosion also reached him, as did shards of rock and wood that lacerated parts of his body. Yet he survived, leaving significant scars on both his pursuers and himself. With that attack, he had managed to lose several of his pursuers, but he was still not safe. To avoid further confrontation with his enemies, or at least to give himself a second wind to recover, he decided to venture deeper and deeper into the forest. Little did he know that he was about to encounter the surprise of his life. Meanwhile, with Cortana. Cortana had sensed the presence of several beings approaching the ship. One of them was very weak, reaching a critical level, which is why she decided to awaken the Master Chief immediately, preparing him for a new battle. After waiting a few minutes for the Spartan to emerge from his long cryogenic sleep, he asked Cortana why he had been awakened. She explained the situation. After 300 years of slumber, he had arrived on this new world similar to his own, and there seemed to be new threats. Unfortunately for the Spartan, who was already weary of war, but noticing the concern in her voice, he decided to put his thoughts aside and get serious. He grabbed a couple of weapons from the room, then took Cortana's chip to reinstall it in his armor. They went outside the ship, awaiting the challenges he would face in this new world. Back with Issei. Back in the battle, Issei was already bloodied and exhausted from facing a squad of 4 individuals comprised of demons and fallen angels. The brown-haired boy was not in optimal condition to continue fighting due to his wounds, exhaustion, and the strain of using boosted gear and Drake's power. His current situation was far from favorable. His pursuers had caught up with him and surrounded him, leaving him no chance of escape. Although they too were wounded, they seemed to be in better shape than him, and they also outnumbered and outmatched him in skill. The chestnut-haired man, exhausted and barely able to stand, refused to die without a fight. So with sheer willpower and encouraged by his dragon companion, Issei assumed the battle stance Drake had taught him. His sacred gear materializing in his left arm, ready for what he considered his last fight for survival. "Now you have no escape, you damn brat," says one of the fallen. "Surrender and we'll kill you quickly and painlessly," says one of the demons. "It's time you hand over that sacred gear. A pathetic, bratty human like you shouldn't have such a valuable object," says another fallen angel. "If I must die here, I will do so fighting to my last breath, and I don't intend to die yet, not before taking several of you with me to Hades," the chestnut-haired man replied. "If that's what you want, then I will grant your wish by killing you slowly and painfully," replied another of the demons who was ready to launch an attack. Before the demon could move to attack the chestnut-haired boy, the sharp sound of a gunshot echoed through the area, followed by a thud as the demon's body fell to the ground. It was struck down by a precise shot to the head, killing the demonic being without even realizing it had hit him. Everyone, including demons, fallen angels, and even Issei, was startled by the sound of that weapon, and the somewhat disturbing image of the fallen demon was not pleasant at all when the next shot hit one of the fallen angels, whose head was split open by the impact of the bullet. Now the atmosphere was tense, worrying, and fearful as they realized they weren't completely alone. The demon, already feeling the winds of fear, was driven by instincts that screamed at him to flee. But suddenly he felt a sharp pain in his neck, his still warm life fluid staining his body. He died quickly after the last of the fallen, seeing his temporary comrade fall in battle. He felt fear and worry, not knowing where the attack would come from far away or close up. He prepared a lance of light to see what angle it would attack from, whether from the front or from his blind spot. The last of the fallen was terrified to find himself the last one standing. He longed to flee, abandoning the brat to the wilds and fleeing, abandoning all hope after his failed mission. That was his plan until he felt a sharp, stabbing pain in his back, which then spread to his torso. A sky-blue blade pierced him. The fallen could only groan in agony, sensing death approaching. He collapsed lifelessly, seeing only Issei left, now gripped by the fear of death, unsure if he would be the last to fall at the hands of this creature. But his wounds, blood loss, and physical and mental exhaustion finally overcame him, sending him into unconsciousness before the eyes of the one responsible for the carnage. None other than Spartan 117, the Master Chief. The Spartan looked at the boy with a certain pity for everything he had been through, surviving in the open. In some ways, it reminded him a lot of his own life as a Spartan. How from a young age he had gone to war against the Covenant, leaving his childhood and youth behind and maturing cruelly for his own good. Seeing that there was no longer any danger, he carried the boy over his shoulders to heal him on the ship with the medicine he had, and hoped that the boy would recover, although he wondered if that sacred gear that those beings were referring to was the red object that the boy had on his left arm. Hours later. Back on the ship forward unto dawn, a young Issei lay on one of the makeshift stretchers. The Spartan, using some first aid kits, attended to Issei, treating his wounds, stopping the bleeding, bruises, and minor trauma. He also made sure to have some food nearby for when the boy woke up, as he most likely hadn't eaten in a while, having been on the run from his pursuers. After a while, the chestnut-haired man had rested after a hectic day. He woke up not in a cold place like the streets, nor in the orphanage, but in a ship where he was with the man who had murdered him and his pursuers who wanted to kill him. At first, he felt fear, thinking he too would meet the same fate, but he and Cortana's hologram reassured the boy, seeing that he was out of danger. They introduced themselves as John 117 and Cortana, while the young man with brown hair introduced himself as Issei, the only thing he knew of his name. The Spartan asked him why he was so far from the city, worried about his family, a question that touched Issei deeply. He lowered his head, saying he was an orphan from birth. The Spartan regretted asking such a personal and inappropriate question, despite his companion's reprimand. But Issei explained that they shouldn't worry, that he had already overcome the death of his parents, life in the orphanage and on the streets, and the struggle for survival against his adversaries. This caught John and Cortana's attention. They saw that this boy had had a very difficult life, yet he always persevered, fighting every day to make something better. Cortana was very reminded of the Spartan's story. He too had lived without parents or family due to his early recruitment and his strict Spartan project training, as well as that unwavering will to fight to the end. No matter if he was mortally wounded, he would continue fighting without fear of death or surrender, something that she and the Spartans saw in the boy. After speaking more calmly to the boy, who was eating something to regain his strength, the Spartan asked him who those mysterious beings with bat-like wings and black wings were. But before the brown-haired boy could answer, the boosted gear on Issei's left arm materialized, and the dragon residing within it spoke in a way that the Spartan and Cortana could hear. Diedreg thanked the Spartan for saving his young wielder from those demons and fallen angels, then introduced himself as the Red Dragon Emperor / Sekiryuutei Diedreg, one of the two celestial dragons. For Cortana and John, hearing the dragon's voice strangely gave them the feeling of speaking with a being of great power and authority, but they hadn't expected that. They were already used to seeing Covenant aliens, brutes, forerunners, and the parasitic flood race, but to see here a dragon, a creature believed to be mythological, had already surpassed their expectations. Diedreg spoke directly to Cortana and John about the supernatural world where his young wielder lived, a world inhabited not only by supernatural beings called angels, fallen angels, and demons in the biblical faction, but also by yokai, vampires, beings from other mythologies such as Asgardian, Egyptian, Greek, and Roman, among others, and especially dragons. This was met with skepticism by the Spartan and Cortana, but given what they had seen throughout their lives, it didn't sound so far-fetched. They also began to discuss how Issei was the current wielder of the boosted gear, in which he was sealed after being defeated alongside the White Dragon Emperor in the Great War of the three biblical factions, one of the 13 Longinus and one of the most powerful in the world, surpassing the powers of the gods and Maus. The Spartan was truly surprised. Now he understood why those demons and fallen wanted to get their hands on the boy at all costs. Seeing that he possessed great power and responsibility, it was obvious he would be an easy target for the factions, whether to recruit him by force or eliminate him as a dangerous threat to their plans. D-Drake, Cortana, and the Spartan were all working together to help Issei learn to defend himself against future threats. D-Drake wanted his wielder to be strong and survive, as his life as a current Sekiryuutei would be anything but easy. Cortana felt pity and empathy for the boy's condition. He reminded her of a much younger John, and she was willing and determined to help him. As for Spartan 117, he saw the boy as his own reflection and was determined to help him no matter what. He also gave Issei a reason to leave him something with which he could forge his own path in the near future and defend himself against those who might try to exploit him. With the right training, better equipped, and more self-assured, he could overcome the darkness that sought to ensnare him. While Issei, now recovered and stronger after healing his wounds, was preparing to return to the city and continue his journey, he had no idea that the one who saved him had other plans for him. You know, Issei, seeing you is like seeing my own reflection, but with the difference that you've had to face life's hardships at a younger age. A great power rests on your shoulders, making you a target for many who are hungry and greedy. Perhaps fate willed this encounter. And that's why it's my responsibility to train you so you can face the difficult challenges the future holds, because if my life has taught me anything, it's that power attracts friends and enemies alike, the Spartan said. The chestnut-haired man was genuinely surprised by John's words. Honestly, he hadn't expected it. He has already done so much for me by saving me and healing my wounds. I appreciate his willingness to help, but I don't want him to make enemies because of me, the chestnut-haired man replied. The Spartan smiled discreetly, surprised by how clever and mature the boy was, all because his condition forced him to grow intellectually faster. Don't worry, Issei, John says. I'm sure that of all the possible places in this world, this jungle is the last place they'd choose to look for you. We have a few years before they realize you're here. John is right in what Issei says. We have enough time to prepare, even prepare ourselves in case something happens sooner than planned, Cortana says confidently. Even so. The chestnut tree was interrupted by its lifelong companion. Cub, they're right, we'll be safe here for a while and you can train safely without worrying about possible attacks. Thanks to the actions of those demons and fallen angels, they'll think they eliminated you, making things easier for us. It will be years before whoever sent them to kill you realizes they failed in their mission, the dragon said. The chestnut-haired man considered the possible options for a few minutes. Okay, I accept the proposal to stay here and train, Issei replies. Cortana smiled at the boy's answer as the Spartan nodded in satisfaction. D-Drake was also pleased with his host's response, as this meant he could train him more freely without being constantly on alert for potential attacks. Excellent. We'll start training tomorrow, and I'm telling you right now it won't be easy. You'll leave blood, sweat, and tears in the tank, John said firmly, testing the boy's conviction and determination. The easy path has never been the best option. Everything in life is obtained through sacrifice, since nothing is free. If to become strong enough to defend myself and help others with the same condition, I have to break all my bones, so be it, the chestnut-haired man replied. The Spartan couldn't have been more pleased with the boy's answer. He's someone with great willpower. Cortana was also satisfied with Issei's answer. Without a doubt, he and John are very similar. So the next morning, the long and rigorous training would begin for the chestnut-haired boy with his 3 teachers to become stronger and someone with the power to forge his own destiny. Although the 3 of them hoped that in time they would be able to train the young Sekiryuutei without any problems. 7 years later. 7 years and a few months have passed since Spartan 117 John, the artificial intelligence Cortana, and the Welsh red dragon D-Drake have intensely, harshly, and strictly trained the young Issei Hayadu, where he began training at an early age, and many things changed from now on for the young Sekiryuutei. To begin with, in the first semesters, D-Drake had spoken directly but honestly about helping his host, but he had a limitation that all humans share: the human heart. Human hearts were vulnerable to deadly diseases, ordinary weapons, and supernatural ones, and their maximum lifespan was 75–85 years old, if they were lucky. That's why he proposed that Issei make a certain sacrifice, his human heart in exchange for a dragon heart. The advantage was that he would no longer have human limitations, and over time, due to the influence of the dragon heart, he would gain other benefits as the years passed, becoming on par with various beings of the supernatural world. These benefits included skin as tough as a dragon's but retaining the appearance of human skin, strengthened vital organs due to dragon blood, stronger bones, stronger muscles, improved vision, and enhanced speed, strength, stamina, and agility, among others. The only disadvantage was vulnerability to dragon slayer weapons. But the sacrifice, it was worth it over the years as the benefits began to become noticeable, now that his physical, mental, and spiritual training was bearing fruit for young Issei. The Master Chief, or rather John 117, gave Issei a comprehensive education from the basics of weapon mastery, starting with the most basic pistols, progressing to heavy artillery like rocket launchers, as well as many other weapons, from those of the Marines to those of the Covenant. Issei in particular mastered the latter, demonstrating a natural talent that impressed the Spartan, who saw in the elites and brutes, even surpassing the Forerunner Sentinels. In addition, he instructed Issei in hand-to-hand combat, from street fighting to stealthy assassinations using his bare hands or any type of weapon. If he wanted to kill silently but brutally, he instructed him in knife fighting. And it wasn't just theory. Thanks to Cortana, he had extensive training sessions lasting entire days in virtual simulations, allowing Issei to put everything he had learned to the test and see if he had learned quickly and effectively on his own. And despite the long hours, Issei fulfilled them to the letter, even exceeding them. With D-Drag, he and his partner Dragon continued training in the mastery of the boosted gear at a much higher level than at the beginning. The first thing was physical conditioning, which at first was brutal for Issei as he felt the first side effects of his dragon heart. These effects began to affect him from the start, as the changes always caused some pain to the boy's body and made the effort of training even greater for the brown-haired boy. But as the years of arduous training passed, these side effects gradually disappeared, and he began to get used to his new heart and dragonic characteristics, which were giving him all the benefits his partner had told him about. Although the only noticeable change was his eyes, which acquired a reptilian appearance and changed color, becoming the same as his partner's. Now he is more capable of mastering the boosted gear without any danger of overexerting himself now that his body is already used to D-Drag's colossal power. Just as some years later, he delved into improving the balance breaker without the time limit, just as he could now handle his pair of dragon wings courtesy of D-Drag in case he needed to fly or to intimidate his enemies if he wanted. With Cortana, she would urge the young Issei to learn tactics, combat strategies, how to fight in certain circumstances, whether direct combat, ambush, hand-to-hand combat, ranged combat, and many more tactical techniques and combat strategies. Thus the years passed between the four until our young now 14-year-old Issei, with the appearance of a 16-17-year-old thanks to his draconic qualities that make him develop in a more accelerated way than a normal human, was dressed in a suit similar to that of Spartan 117, except that it was a crimson-red color with an orange visor, and the outer part of his armor had a light black suit in which he fit to his measure. After many years, our hero Issei found himself on his last day aboard the ship, having been told by Spartan John that it was his time to depart. Cortana initially protested, seeing what her partner and best man was planning to do, but Spartan John explained that he was weary of wars, battles, massacres, and death. Knowing he would never return to his former home, he decided it was time to rest in peace and join his fallen comrades and colleagues. Cortana and Issei were saddened, but understanding the Master Chief's decision and knowing it would be the Spartan's last day, he decided to give Issei Cortana's chip, which he integrated into his helmet to create his armor following Cortana's guidance. He also took most of the weapons and with D-Drag's help transferred them to the boosted gear to incorporate them into his new arsenal. With a few final words, the Spartan said goodbye to his pupil with a hug, something very rare for him. He was always stoic and cold, but seeing that his time to leave had come, he stopped showing his emotions to his apprentice, who returned the gesture. Once they said goodbye to the Spartan, Issei left the place after the Spartan activated the ship's self-destruct process, destroying everything inside including him, erasing all evidence that anything had ever been there. Out of the forest, Issei, saddened by his master's departure, held his head high now that the Spartan had entrusted his legacy to him. Along with Cortana and D-Drag, he would forge a name that everyone would remember. Issei Hayadu, the Spartan Sekiryuutei, has arrived to shake the world. Chapter 2. This is a non-profit fanfic created by me, Lucifer, based on the original high school DxD story by Issei Ishibumi, and the Halo video game series owned by Microsoft Studios. Hello, how are you? Dialogues. Hello, can you hear me? Phone call, hologram, etc. I'll see you in notes, letters, document readings, and words to highlight. Be strong for your loved ones and your dreams, D-Drag or some dragon speaking to everyone. It's good to be back, D-Drag or some dragon talking to its host mentally. Hello everyone, important announcement about something. Time for a change and new allies. In a galaxy far, far away. In a part of the Halo universe. Planet Sanghelios. Location CE 809012. Home of the Shangheli race, or better known as the Elites. 35 years after the third Halo ring was destroyed and the death of Spartan. Several years have passed since the events of the last war between the human race, commanded by the UNSC United States Marine Corps, and the confederation of alien planets led by the so-called prophets, better known as the Covenant. Their struggle ended after the third destruction of Halo, where they thwarted the parasitic flood race and the prophets' machinations, but at a great cost in human, elite, brute, and forerunner sentinel lives. The ultimate sacrifice was made by one man who gave his life for them, especially for the one who gave them the opportunity to escape Halo's destruction at the cost of his friend's life. This left a mark on the conscience of Thelvadam, or the Arbiter, as the prophets had named him, the highest rank in the Covenant army. As time passed after the end of the war, he and his race had separated from the Covenant through a non-aggression pact between the two races. The Inquisitor knew that this pact, although possible, was very ephemeral. He knew that another prophet or corrupt humans would try to break it, and the bloody wars between the two races would return. The Inquisitor decided to isolate himself from the others, but not before leaving all power to his closest ally and friend, Artas Vadam, as the new leader of his race of elites. During his time in exile, the Arbiter in a remote location off Sanghelios monitored all types of transmissions, including emergencies, when he received a distress call. But this was no ordinary call. When the Arbiter heard the distress message, he heard Cortana's voice informing him that both she and the Master Chief were safe, but in a different universe millions of light years away. Upon learning they were still alive, the Arbiter checked the coordinates from which the message had been transmitted. Using the most advanced GPS technology his Covenant possessed, he determined that this universe was located in the Milky Way galaxy, in the Orion Belt, on a planet inhabited by life, a planet called Earth. Having the exact coordinates, the Inquisitor knew he only had one chance to see his old friend again, and with that he took a Phantom, a Covenant transport ship, the best Covenant weaponry and provisions for several light years. The Inquisitor set in motion an odyssey to the farthest reaches of this galaxy for a single purpose: in search of Spartan 117. Before departing, the Inquisitor had left a message with an audio recording of himself saying goodbye to his compatriots upon learning that they had found the Spartan, so that they would not worry about his absence. The Inquisitor could now leave in peace and set off towards the next galaxy. "That was very easy," whispered the Inquisitor. Typical phrase of the Inquisitor in Halo 3. Without further ado, the Inquisitor said goodbye to his home, his country, and his friends, to go in search of his old comrade in arms and bring him back, unaware that he had entered a world quite different from his own. Meanwhile on Earth DXD universe. 3 years after the death of Spartan, the Master Chief. After a very emotional farewell at the departure of the last surviving Spartan of the Galactic Wars, our young Sekiryuutei Spartan Issei wore his battle armor inherited from his deceased master along with a large arsenal and ammunition of Spartan and Covenant weapons. But the biggest surprise was that his also master and special friend Cortana was by his side in the chip installed in his helmet. Now he had two entities with him, Cortana in the chip, and D-Drag in the boosted gear of his left arm. After saying their final goodbyes to their master, may he rest in peace, Issei and his companions left the Kuo forest and ventured into the shadows of Kuo City. Now not alone and better prepared to face high-risk situations, he still had in mind those responsible for hunting him, whether they were fallen angels, rebels, or street demons. He would hunt them down and kill those supernatural beings without mercy. After spending a few weeks in the dark streets of Kuo, Issei managed to infiltrate the Kuo City government building and reclaim his family's inheritance, which was rightfully his, including both money and material possessions. Having secured his inheritance, Issei returned to his former home, the house of his parents, may they rest in peace. Issei, along with his dear friend and virtual partner Cortana and his associate D-Drag, were decorating the Hyaudu house. The latter two mostly offered opinions and suggestions, as the boy did all the work. Although the dragon, rather than helping, only mocked him, since Cortana had him constantly moving things around, dusting, sweeping, and mopping to tidy everything up. Even though the virtual girl was part of the military, it didn't make her any less feminine or lacking in rough taste in this area. The brunette had to admit that she had class and style, as good as the best decorators, when it came to organizing, distributing the appropriate space for each object, and decorating with elegance while maintaining a homey touch. By the end, the boy was exhausted, since even his intense training didn't compare to everything he had gone through to leave the house spotless and organized, mostly because of Cortana's orders, as she didn't allow him to leave a single corner of the house uncleaned and untidy. Issei and Cortana agreed to make some modifications to the residence, though it would take time and dedication. Cortana's idea was to implement a complete USMC, United States Marine Corps, headquarters, but without altering the exterior or part of the interior. It would be more like a special, secret floor of the house to avoid arousing suspicion. They would use various useful parts salvaged from the ship's crash, though Issei would have to find a way to obtain most of the materials, as what they could get from the wreckage wouldn't be enough, perhaps only 2 or 3/10 of what was needed. The design of the headquarters wouldn't be a problem since Cortana had the designs for the Pillar of Autumn. They would also install an armory so the brown-haired boy could store all the weapons his master had given him. Not to mention that Cortana had more ambitious plans for the not-too-distant future, such as an interstellar radio room, among other things. But for now, the priority was that the brown-haired boy had a home to live. Besides, currently they could only build the armory in the basement of the house, since even with the money from his parents' accounts, the boy didn't have the full budget to carry out such a project. And he couldn't spend it all since he needed money to pay the household bills and buy groceries while he looked for a way to earn money. And he already had one in mind, working as a mercenary, and Drake supported the idea. Although it earned them a good reprimand from Cortana, the chestnut-haired boy took most of the responsibility, since even though he was strong, he was still dangerous. And besides, there were still other options for earning money. The other thing is that the boy, like any teenager, indulged himself, buying a plasma TV, a video game console, DVDs with several movies, and a laptop, of course. This earned him a lecture from the virtual girl for wasting money. But she was still lenient with the brunette since she was glad that the boy was acting like a teenager his age. Even with all this, Issei didn't neglect his training and continued training with Drake, focusing on physical conditioning, booster gear handling, improving his dragon shoot and creating variations, and balance breaker to better utilize his state and extend its duration. He also worked on improving his magic, the area where he had made the least progress since the dragon couldn't assist him much. Another area of focus was the Spartan battle armor, which they worked on improving, as he couldn't wear it all the time to talk to his virtual friend, nor would it be very discreet to go out in public wearing it. Together with Cortana, they reviewed tactics of infiltration, stealth assassination, espionage, counterattacks, direct attacks, and retreat so that the young Sekiryuutei Spartan wouldn't become rusty during his free time. As the months passed, Issei decided to put into practice everything he had learned from his partner Drake, his mentor Master Chief, and his companion and guide Cortana, working as a mercenary despite Cortana's protests and disapproval. Without any affiliation, he acquired some Covenant weapons, such as the beam rifle, a precision rifle, the needler, some plasma grenades, and finally his reliable and one of his favorite weapons, the energy sword. And you might wonder why he didn't choose the Marines or the Spartans' weapons. Simple, during the time they were modifying Covenant weapons, these only needed to be charged with energy batteries, and with the help of a certain red dragon, along with its power, the Covenant weapons never ran out of ammunition. But with the Marines, it was a different story. They would have to find other options to modify or adapt the ammunition for their weapons, whether it was the pistol, assault rifles, battle rifles, sniper rifles, submachine guns, shotguns, or rocket launchers, with the exception of Drake's favorite, the Spartan laser. Like the other Covenant weapons, it also needed its battery recharged, and by adapting it with Drake's energy, it had unlimited ammunition and a bonus that would make anyone who angered the Sekiryuutei Spartan tremble. That weapon is inherently very effective at destroying all-terrain vehicles, armored vehicles, tanks, and even airplanes succumb to its laser. Adding the Red Dragon's energy, its destructive power is comparable, albeit on a smaller scale, to a Juggernaut drive. On a scale of 1 to 10, it would fall somewhere between 2 and 4. This destructive power cannot be taken lightly as it could cause cataclysmic disasters. A few months after the chestnut-haired man began his foray into the world of paid work as an independent mercenary, his first missions involved taking down human criminals, organized crime figures, delinquents, rapists, sadists, psychopaths, and terrorists. Each one of them ended up dead, whether by having their heads blown off with a shot from a kilometer away without leaving a trace of bullet or gunpowder, riddled with a certain pink crystal, pulverized without leaving a trace, or worse, impaled, decapitated, or dismembered with surgically precise cuts that even the sharpest katana blade couldn't make. And as his reputation grew among others, many sought his services to do the dirty work, from hostage negotiations and counterterrorism to espionage, torture, interrogation, and even the extermination of criminal gangs. His services weren't cheap as he operated entirely alone and his fees were exorbitant. However, his flawless, perfect profile made it worthwhile to hire the services of the now-called Sekiryuutei Spartan. When he had free time, he rested at home in Cortana's company, and thanks to the Spartan armor, Issei could sense and see the hologram of a young woman in her 20s, with a body envied by every woman who would always be great company to the young Spartan. And like Issei, Cortana was also having a great time with her young Spartan. After a period of mourning the loss of her best man, Cortana saw Issei as John's legacy and felt a deep connection with him, from his personality and mannerisms to his fighting style. Despite his coldness and seriousness, Issei retained that kind, honest, and humble side that Cortana loved. Even without a physical body, she tried to always be there for him. She hoped that this magical world, which holds so many secrets, would find a way for her to revive so she could be near him, as it would make it easier to help him. But in the meantime, she would try to be the best support he could be. After all, the only people he had were a super powerful dragon and herself, but both were limited. He had always worn his Spartan battle armor, but it was starting to bother him as he realized he also needed a social life on Q. With Cortana's help, he had created a kind of watch that allowed him to activate and deactivate his battle armor, revealing his ordinary teenage clothes. When it was time to fight, he would press the button on his watch, and his entire body would be enveloped in his Spartan armor in seconds. If he needed to carry weapons, he could originally only carry 2 at a time. But now, with the help of his partner D-Drake, he had created a pocket dimension where he could summon a variety of weapons, from a simple pistol with a scope to the Spartan laser, or, in the case of the Covenant, from a simple plasma pistol to the energy sword in all its glory. If he carried too many weapons, he wouldn't be able to quickly access the one he needed, as he would have to search for it. I was inspired by the Iron Man movies where Tony Stark transforms into Iron Man in seconds. And in his social life, despite never having gone to school, he had vast experience at the level of a university student thanks to the advanced teachings of his partner Cortana, who was very strict and tough in that respect. But it was worth all the sleepless nights, since with that he did not fall behind in the educational field and was also more up-to-date in the cultural aspect of his city. As time passed, Issei took a great leap from eliminating mere human criminals to eliminating supernatural beings who infiltrated the city's nights, from street demons to rebel fallen angels with macabre purposes. And like the criminals, they too met their tragic fate at the Spartans' hands, some with decapitated limbs at the hands of the demons, their faces showing pure terror, faces that expressed mercy, pity, horror before their executioner. And for the fallen, it was much worse. In addition to being decapitated, they were stripped of their dark wings, plucked or torn off by brute force, causing them great agony. Some of the victims' bodies showed everything from gunshot wounds with traces of plasma, pierced with pink crystals, heads exploded by a precise shot to the temple that instantly destroyed their brain, to fine cuts on their bodies. Although to the brown-haired man's dismay, in his opinion, along with Cortana's and D-Drake's, his rivals were of lower rank or lesser relevance, so they were easy to eliminate without filling him with the excitement he preferred. He wants enemies that are difficult to defeat so that he can kill them with more pleasure. When it comes to combat typical of dragons and Spartans, they seek high-caliber enemies. Regardless of whether they lose their lives, they will never surrender. That's what this situation leads us to. At the age of 17, the young Sekiryuutei Spartan Issei Hayadu, after a day off, stopped to buy groceries to fill his pantry and enjoy an afternoon free from killing supernatural beings for now, though. He also enjoyed the breeze in Kyo City. It was a perfect afternoon for Issei, and although he would have liked some action in his work as a mercenary, a break now and then wasn't so bad. After having some fun, the young Sekiryuutei was at home checking his laptop for anything new when he saw a discreet, not to say anonymous, message in his inbox. It seemed someone was requesting his services as a mercenary to take care of a matter. Apparently, his anonymous client had requested that he eliminate a nest infested with rogue fallen angels who were making a deal with a group of renegade exorcists who had betrayed the church and were planning to ally with these beings for mutual benefit. His client asked him to take care of them all, as this group had killed innocent people who were unaware of the supernatural, and therefore asked him to use all necessary means, since safeguarding innocent lives was of vital importance. The location where they would meet was on the outskirts of Kyo City, on a hill overlooking much of the city. With that, Issei, along with D-Drake and Cortana, were ready for this mission, and Hayadu himself activated his battle armor, enveloping him in the Spartan suit and arming his weaponry for yet another massacre. 6 hours later, midnight, outside Kyo City on a hill, the meeting place. The chestnut-haired man arrived at the agreed-upon meeting place a couple of minutes early. He inspected the area with the help of D-Drake and Cortana, searching for any anomalies that might indicate a trap or ambush. Finding nothing suspicious, he waited calmly for the anonymous person, remaining vigilant throughout, as his supernatural radar was still active. Watching his back a couple of minutes before the appointed time, a powerful presence of holy power appeared, followed by a burst of light that revealed a blonde man, approximately 25-28 years old, with 6 pairs of golden angel wings. Behind him were 3 other beings, each with 3 pairs of white wings. The dragon sealed within the chestnut-haired man told its host that these beings were angels, and that one of them was of high rank. Each of them exuded sacred power, but especially the blonde one among the golden ones, who stood out among the 4 by a wide margin, causing Issei to be on the defensive, but without showing hostility to the newcomers, since they did not show hostility to him either. Seconds later, the 4 angels descended to earth a couple of meters from the chestnut tree. Seeing that there was no hostility among his guests, and that silence reigned for a few moments. The brown-haired man decided to break the ice. "So you're the one who contacted me, anonymous-san?" The chestnut-haired man asks in a firm but non-hostile tone. "That's right, mercenary-son, I was the one who contacted you anonymously. My name is Michael, one of the Seraphim of Heaven," the winged blonde replied. The chestnut-haired man had to admit he was pleasantly surprised. He never expected the angels to contact him directly to give him some kind of task. "Nice to meet you, Miguel-san. I thought we agreed this meeting would be just the two of us at the agreed-upon location. You never mentioned you'd be bringing company." The chestnut-haired man greeted. "I apologize if I concealed that part, but this territory is guarded by demons. Furthermore, fallen angels have infiltrated it, and although I can easily handle them, I want to avoid any misunderstandings with the fallen and demons. My presence here could disturb the demons who watch over this place, as well as the fallen, so I must have company in case of any misunderstanding or the worst-case scenario," the Seraphim apologized. "Well, that's understandable of you, Miguel-san. Okay, let's get to the important part. What kind of work have you contacted me about?" The Spartan asks. "Okay, in the message I sent there were some details about the job to be done. The situation is this: we've received confirmation of an infestation of fallen angels gathered in the Renaissance city of Venice. They've allied themselves with a group of rogue exorcists who were expelled from the church. These two groups have joined forces with nefarious intentions for mutual benefit, causing problems in small towns and even at the Vatican. Furthermore, a small group of roaming demons has recently taken up residence in a village near Florence and has claimed the lives of innocent people who are unaware of the supernatural. The mission itself consists of exterminating these two groups to prevent the loss of more innocent lives," the Seraph replied seriously. "I see if I accept this mission, will I have free reign in what I have to do? You know, I'll exterminate everyone I find regardless of the method. The only restriction would be not to involve innocent people," the mercenary asked. "You are free to do what you have to do, but without involving innocent people who don't suffer the crossfire. You will be paid when you have finished your mission. Does that seem fair to you?" the Seraph asks. "No problem, but this double mission will be very costly. I'll try to exterminate these threats as quickly as possible. You already know my method for these kinds of missions," the brunette replied. "Yes, I'm aware of that, but there's no problem as long as innocent people aren't involved," the blonde angel replies. "Okay, so when should I start to leave for Italy?" the mercenary asked in a serious tone, which the angels also saw indicated that he was ready. "Since you'll be doing us a great favor with these two trouble groups, we'll take you to the city of Venice. From then on, you'll have to fend for yourself until we meet again," says the blonde angel. "That would be a great help and would save me a lot of time. I appreciate that ride to Italy, and don't worry about me, Miguel-san. I'm used to taking care of myself. I know what needs to be done from now on, although I'm not entirely alone," the Spartan replied thought seriously. "Okay, it's time to leave." Having said that, the Seraphim placed his hand on the mercenary's shoulder as his three escorts formed a circle around them. A radiance appeared, and when it vanished, the mercenary and the Seraphim were no longer there. The three angels, having completed their task, also disappeared. Venice, Italy. Seconds later, midnight. Outside the ancient city of Bella Venetia, Miguel and the Spartan appear at an abandoned hacienda in the naval city. Many wouldn't venture into this derelict place due to the rising waters of the rivers. Once a haven for the human elite, where they held private parties and business conferences, the hacienda, now abandoned and decayed, became a perfect haven for rogue fallen angels. They seized the property after its former owners inexplicably vanished. The fallen and exorcists used the hacienda as their base of operations and meeting place to negotiate with their new partners. A group of rebel exorcists who had betrayed the Vatican Church after committing crimes against humanity. These crimes included the indiscriminate massacres of villages and towns, killing all civilians, men, women, children, the elderly, and even animals. According to the limited information given to Issei, there were a large number of people inside the abandoned estate, ranging from 50 to 80, with more guarding the perimeter. The Seraphim had already withdrawn, leaving the Spartan alone, but not before saying a few words. "Take this paper. The seal drawn on it is special. You can use it to contact me once you complete the mission. Florence is located a little over 270 kilometers southeast. To find the demon's lair, you'll have to continue further east. On the outskirts, there's an apartment complex abandoned because of the war." After handing the paper to the Spartan and giving him the necessary information, the Seraphim rose up, turning into light and disappearing. "Good luck, young mercenary, may God protect you." That was the last thing the Seraphim said before disappearing completely. With Issei alone, he unfurled his dragon wings and took flight, drawing closer to the lair of his intended prey. Still on the outskirts of Venice, a considerable distance away, he was watched from the roof of an empty warehouse by his companion Cortana and his partner Didraig. Using the scope of the Covenant beam rifle, the Covenant's precision rifle, he spotted one of the many exorcists standing guard. After all, they were in Angel territory and didn't want any surprises. After surveying the area, he prepared some weapons from his dimensional pocket, including some of his favorite Spartan toys. Cortana situation report. Issei asked his virtual partner, I have detected some squads of guards loitering on the outskirts of the estate, no more than 5 subjects of lower rank, others are guarding on the walls and roofs. Many of them were armed with illegal weapons from firearms to weapons from the fallen angels that are included with sacred power. Partner, I think it's time to test the ability of your armor, the one Cortana and I modified months ago. D-Drake advised its wearer. D-Drake is right, it's time to put it into practice. We have nothing to lose, Cortana said, seeing the situation that would soon descend into hell. Well, if everything goes well, a day off for everyone, does that sound good? Perfect, okay, both D-Drake and Cortana said to a somewhat surprised Issei, who saw that his companions supported the idea of a day off to relax. Okay, let's get started. Cortana, please activate the ability. Right away activate armor mode Promethean vision. Cortana said, activating one of the many abilities of the Spartan armor and modifying it with D-Drake's help to adapt to the supernatural world. And so, Issei, wearing his Spartan armor, peered through his helmet's visor, which allowed him to see through objects and walls at short, medium, and long ranges for a limited time, a time he used wisely. In that brief period, he detected a large number of individuals, from rogue exorcists to fallen angels of varying ranks. 60% were low-ranking, 30% were mid-ranking, and only 10% were high-ranking, an acceptable level for Issei and his companions. Okay, we have more than 3 groups guarding this place. We can silence them from a distance, but the element of surprise won't last long. The other option is infiltration, but security is a concern and you'd be detected eventually. A direct assault isn't an option either, as it would be suicide even with your weaponry and experience. That's on another level. What do you decide to do, Issei? Cortana asked, seeing the somewhat complicated situation. Meanwhile, the brown-haired man, still with his beam rifle, also pulled a silenced pistol and a silenced submachine gun with a night vision scope from his pocket dimension, using ammunition adaptable to this world. Luckily for Issei, he was able to load them with 9 parabellum rounds. You know best what to do, D-Drake. Keep me informed and, if possible, diminish my supernatural presence. This time, no fallen angel or exorcist will survive this, Issei said as he silently loaded his silent weapons with some clips. Okay, partner, but if the situation warrants it, you should use the balance breaker only if things get really bad, partner. I advise D-Drake, seeing that his partner and companion will face a large number of enemies, several of them high-level. Thanks for the advice, partner. Cortana, I need you to be on top of the situation if there are any developments. I need you to be my eyes and ears in case they have any emergency plans, Issei said as he prepared all his weaponry, including plasma grenades, a marine combat knife, and his trusty energy sword. That's my job, Issei. Remember, we're one and the same and we have to protect each other. Cortana said in a commanding tone to ensure, or rather to make sure, that she wouldn't risk exposing herself again, a flaw she inherited from Master Chief, much to the virtual girl's annoyance. Don't worry, Cortana, I don't plan to take any risks this time. I'll follow your advice and go undercover. Let's get this going. The Spartan said, his silenced submachine gun slung into the dark night on the outskirts of Venice. The poor fallen exorcists will not know that I am hitting them. 5 minutes later, about 500 meters outside the hacienda. With the first guard doing their daily patrol, those so-called guards were mere cannon fodder recruits of the fallen angels, very low level with no combat experience and with poor melee and ranged weapons. They were more than just henchmen of the fallen angels' lineage, but also their counterpart of exorcist recruits who were also doing their midnight night patrol. Near the dense, dark forest stood a certain Spartan who, with his submachine gun, had his sights set on the first lone henchman who decided to take a short break, relieving himself in the woods. And Issei, even with his invisibility armor ability, was on the lookout for his first victim. Hurry up, rookie, we don't have all damn night to wait for you, shouted one of the guards while he was waiting for him. I'm coming, don't bother me, damn, this place is abandoned. How do you think someone so naive could infiltrate such a lonely place? At that moment, once he had finished relieving himself, he was preparing to meet up when he felt something cold and liquid on his neck. "Shhh, die scum," said a ghost wielding a bloodied combat knife, having just slashed the man's trachea. Preventing him from screaming for help, he fell heavily, drawing the attention of his companions, who were shocked to see that he had once again fallen asleep on guard duty. One of them decided to wake the man, unaware that he was walking into a sinister trap. "Ah, no, not again. That's the 3rd time you've tried to avoid work. I'd better wake you up or things will get worse, but what the ugh." A shot to the head silenced the subject, while the other 3, seeing what had happened, took out their firearms and one of them tried to illuminate what was happening with a lamp. "Damn, I don't like this at all. You call for reinforcements now," he ordered, apparently the leader of that group. "Yes, sir, ugh." Another shot, this time to the head and temple, quickly and silently killed the poor man with the radio. The two remaining men, or rather the last man, already terrified, tried to load his assault rifle, but he was swiftly executed with more shots to the chest, riddled with bullets. The poor man now resembled a cheddar cheese with many holes. The last man tried to grab his fallen comrade's radio and call for backup, but what the unfortunate man didn't realize was that his executioner, who had already killed his men, was behind him with a pistol pointed at the back of his neck. "What do you value most in life?" Asked the entity holding the pistol, while the terrified man threw down both his weapon and rifle, begging for mercy and pleading for his life to be spared, pleas that fell on deaf ears. "Good boy." That was all he could hear from that man before a sharp sound was heard as the head of that fallen angel exploded from the impact of the bullet, revealing the identity of the one responsible for that massacre. It was the Sekiryuutei Spartan himself, holding a silenced pistol and a submachine gun, also with a scope and silencer, reloading it with new ammunition while picking up the radio from his last victim lying on the ground. In doing so, he noticed that the next guard was trying to communicate. "Tango 1, situation report. Tango, report your location and situation." He ordered that it appeared to be the next patrol, which was on duty elsewhere outside the ranch. "Tango 1, our area is clear. Where are you located?" Issei ordered, trying to disguise the voices of his victims as he watched to see if the guards would swallow him. "This is Cash 1, we're at our post to the north. Assemble immediately. Our leaders will begin the meeting. Hurry up now." The order, seemingly from the captain of Cash 1, spoke in an authoritative tone, seeing that he had fallen into his trap. "Tango 1, we're on our way, over and out." Issei finished saying as he smashed the radio with the sole of his combat boot, while now Issei changed his new weapon as he headed north to meet up with the next guard. "Partner, I'll make the dragonic energy as subtle as possible since I detected several fallen angels inside the church, and a trio of them are high level. Be careful not to underestimate them." Drake advised seriously, seeing that for now the mission was going well, but they still needed to keep a cool head and proceed with caution to maintain order. "Thanks for the advice, partner. Cortana, any updates?" The Spartan asked his virtual companion. "For now, Issei hasn't reported any anomalies. Go to the woods, you'll surprise the second patrol there. We have to do it quickly and quietly," Cortana advised her partner. "Okay," replied the Spartan, activating his invisibility armor once again while preparing his beam rifle towards the unsuspecting patrol that was still waiting for the previous patrol and was completely wiped out by the Spartan. 3 minutes later. After a few minutes hidden in the woods, Issei lay back with his beam rifle, its scope pointed at the patrol. They were growing impatient as the patrol to the south failed to arrive, and their patience was wearing thin. They sent 2 of their men to retrieve them and find out where he was. 100 meters away in a blind spot, Issei began his hunt, blasting the heads of the poor men who didn't even have a chance to hear the impact, as the shot wasn't a bullet but a blast of compressed plasma. 2 are gone and 3 remain, Issei said to himself as he let his beam rifle cool down, since it has the defect of overheating after the first 2 shots and even faster if they are fired consecutively. And seeing that 2 more men were sent out to scout, but unaware that Issei, with his submachine gun still hidden among the trees and using his night vision scope, was riddling them with bullets, and thanks to his silencer he still had the element of surprise. The captain, realizing that the 2 men were being completely riddled with bullets, decided to run for reinforcements, but all he could see was a beam of crimson red, bringing him down with a sweeping blow that severed his tendons with his trusty combat knife. The man's pain screams were never heard after Issei, with a chokehold, broke his neck, turning his head 180 degrees, giving the poor captain a terrifying sight. "All guards eliminated. Drake, Cortana situation report." The brown-haired man asked as he cleaned the dead captain's blood from his combat knife. 4 lookouts on the roof. They haven't detected you yet, Issei, Cortana said, informing him of new obstacles. "Partner, there are over 50 people on the estate. Most of them are human rogue exorcists, and the few are fallen angels. 3 of them are high-level." Drake added, giving Issei new information. After checking for witnesses, Issei reloaded his beam rifle to quickly take up a vantage point and silence the lookouts on the rooftops. Once in position, Issei, beam rifle in hand, had his sights set on the first lookout, who was asleep in a chair instead of standing guard properly. The Spartan himself would grant him eternal rest, so he could sleep forever, and to seal the subject's fate, he pulled the trigger, unleashing a powerful shot of compressed plasma to the heart, giving him a swift death, since the shot not only destroyed his heart but also part of his lung. "Defeated," Cortana replied to Issei as he pointed at a couple of sentries who were on guard duty. "Target in sight, watch me do a double headshot," Issei says. Cortana and Drake, who are in the front row, have a privileged view of the spectacle. And just as he had said, with a precision shot to the head, a shot that literally blew their heads off, he killed the 2 lookouts. "Double kill," Issei exclaimed as he left his beam rifle reloading after that last shot. Faced with that scene, his companions simply tended to say that phrase in total synchronicity. "Don't be so cocky, partner. That phrase was more of a repressed expression than anything else, since the brunette can be quite overconfident. Okay, don't scold me. Good, we're missing the last one. Do you have his location coordinates? Issei asked his companion Cortana, who, along with D-Drake, was giving them the coordinates of the last remaining lookout. He's 100 meters away, and according to the coordinates D-Drake gave, he's awake. Hurry and eliminate him before he sets off the intruder alarm, Cortana said seriously, urging him to act quickly. Understood. Advance towards the objective, Issei said as he positioned himself to eliminate the last target outside. Once he found the last sentry on his patrol, he positioned himself to take down the target, and once in midair, he eliminated him with a headshot. Exterior targets eliminated, phase 1 complete, Issei said as he headed towards the door of the largest building in the area, which he had observed with his Promethean vision and which was the location with the highest number of enemies. He reactivated his invisibility and entered, finding what appeared to be a combination reception-loving area and bar. At the bar, he spotted an exorcist who seemed to be the bartender, drinking a glass of wine alone. Issei immediately drew his pistol and without hesitation with a single precise shot to the head ended the exorcist's life. The man had barely finished his drink when he collapsed to the ground. Fortunately for the Spartan, his trusty pistol was equipped with a silencer, thus maintaining the element of surprise. Issei, what did I tell you? Cortana reprimanded him for exposing himself too much after killing his enemy head-on. What? It was either kill him outright before he detected me, or say goodbye to the element of surprise. Besides, Cortana, you stay calm, I'm nervous, everything's under control, Issei said simply, already used to his virtual partner's constant scolding whenever he did something reckless. Meanwhile, on the upper floor of the buildings. On this floor of the building was what appeared to be a large ceremonial and event hall. A meeting conference was taking place there. In the hall were several individuals dressed in what seemed to be a combination of black and burgundy robes and togas, while others wore more formal business-style suits and ties. The most striking feature of these individuals was their wings with plumage as black as night. Most of them, particularly the fallen angels, were armed with light spears, while some of the exorcists carried firearms and light-induced swords, typical of them. At that moment, the fallen one, who appears to be the leader of this group, being the strongest with 3 pairs of wings, was wearing a jet black executive suit. He carried a briefcase which he placed on the pedestal, and on either side of him stood one of his loyal followers armed with light spears protecting him. Well, gentlemen, thank you for coming to this extremely important meeting. I know you should be busy killing more people for our benefit, but well, I won't beat around the bush. I want to form an alliance with you exorcists. I know you were expelled from the Vatican after committing several murders and acting without authorization. And that's why we must unite to wipe out those disgusting demons, the corrupt members of the church, and any faction that opposes us. The representative exclaimed jubilantly, while the others, both from his faction and the exorcists, celebrated with applause for the proposal, except for a few who were still unsure about this alliance. And what do we gain from this alliance, fallen angel? Questioned the one who appears to be the representative of the renegade exorcists. Oh, please, you hurt me with that question. Don't worry, this alliance benefits us both, exorcist, the fallen leader replied. At that moment, the fallen angel opened the briefcase, revealing a large amount of euro and dollar bills, attracting everyone's attention. Gentlemen, the other reason for our meeting is to discuss that mysterious individual who has been burying and murdering our fellow angels. I suspect he possesses a sacred gear, and for that reason, I am offering a reward of $500,000 for whoever brings him to me dead and $1 million for whoever brings him to me alive. The representative of the fallen angels proposed this hefty reward, his gaze fixed on the avaricious eyes of both his fellow angels and exorcists. Do you have any more information about that subject? A low-level exorcist asks the fallen angel. Unfortunately, that guy is like a ghost. We don't know where he'll strike next. That's why we must act to capture and eliminate him for our own good, the representative replied, met with approval from many of his followers. With a gesture of his fingers, the party began, where everyone ate, drank, and entertained themselves to lighten the mood. Meanwhile, downstairs, back with the Spartan, Issei was already prepared with the needler to begin the massacre. But at that moment, a mini elevator door descended, catching Issei's attention. Still on high alert, he inspected the area and found nothing until, "Hey bartender, bring more champagne and wine right away, this party's getting good," said a voice that sounded like that of a fallen angel who was starting to feel the effects of the alcohol. Issei was taken by surprise and quietly let out a shit in the face of such a situation and didn't know what to do or respond since he had silenced the bartender. Now that the element of surprise was at risk, he asked his companions for advice. Cortana, who is more familiar with this type of problem, was the one who told him how to act. "They're on their way," replied the bartender, who was actually Issei, in a deep voice to avoid arousing suspicion. The man responded with an okay, oblivious to everything, and ended the conversation. With the danger temporarily over, Issei, with the help of D-Drake and Cortana, was planning his next strategy, which involved a surprise attack, emulating the Trojan horse tactic, taking advantage of the fact that everyone in the room was distracted. All right. Now I must use all my bartender skills and prepare these bottles as best as possible so that when served it's something explosive, says the Spartan. The chestnut tree served a little gift in the champagne and wine because under the ice in the bucket, there is an extra courtesy of the Spartan fragmentation grenades and plasma grenades powered by dragonic energy. The Spartan placed the gift in the small elevator to take it up to the first floor where the meeting was taking place. He then subtly ascended the stairs with a pair of submachine guns, now without the silencer and fully loaded. He was ready for bloodshed, but as he stealthily climbed the stairs, an unsuspecting exorcist came down to relieve himself. Instinctively, he drew his combat knife and with his characteristic stealth, approached the exorcist and severed his trachea, killing him instantly. He prevented the body from falling and making noise, and Issei returned to his mission. Phew, that was close, Issei said, sighing with relief. Next time, pay more attention, Issei, Cortana scolded him for his recklessness. You can scold me as many times as you want, but not today. We still have to wrap up the grand finale, Issei replied, cautiously glancing at the upper floor, but his partner hadn't finished scolding him yet. How many times have I told you? A stealth mission requires discretion and speed, but I see you're still following the boss's teachings, Cortana said, somewhat annoyed by her partner's attitude. Cortana, we can continue this conversation later. We're on a mission. Issei tried to defend himself until a certain dragon also joined the conversation. You've been told that 1735 times, mate, D-Drake commented simply but lazily, causing both the Spartan and the virtual girl to stop their usual discussion and a drop of sweat to form on the back of his neck because of the Welsh dragon's statement. At the dragon's comment, both Issei and Cortana looked at the boy's left hand, which had a faint emerald green on its back. If they could have seen the dragon at that moment, they would have seen his somewhat bored and relaxed expression. Are you really keeping track, D-Drake? Cortana asked, somewhat skeptical. Yes, the dragon replied lazily. Why? Issei asked, also skeptical and curious to know why she was keeping track of the times Cortana had scolded him. Easy, the dragon replied. I had nothing to do while you were training with Cortana, and one day I decided to make a friendly bet with two former hosts I hadn't seen in a while. The bet is that the losers have to address the winner with Sama. The challenge is for whoever can guess the number of times Cortana will scold you on a scale of no more than 100 in a certain number of missions, and this is the last mission of the stipulated number. For example, saying you'd be reprimanded between 1,500 and 1,600 times. Issei and Cortana felt a bead of sweat trickle down their necks upon hearing the reason for the bill, and it grew larger as they listened to the bet. But a question came to them, who are those two hosts? But it seemed D-Drake had beaten them to it. If you're wondering who they are, they were former wielders of the boosted gear. Belzard, the strongest male wielder who defeated the target twice, and Elsha, the strongest female wielder. Furthermore, they are the only two wielders who didn't succumb to the boosted gear's curse. Upon hearing the mention of D-Drake's former wielders, the chestnut-haired boy was flooded with memories of the lessons the dragon had taught. He thought all the wielders had been trapped in a trance by the curse, but it seemed that wasn't the case, and two of them had survived. He wondered where they had gone since he hadn't seen them when he visited the boosted gear. Cortana, for her part, was somewhat surprised, as it seemed several had wielded the sacred artifact that the chestnut-haired boy currently possessed. She was also a little jealous upon hearing the girl's name. In the end, the lucky Elsha won the bet. That girl has the luck of a demon, she always wins. Anyway, I'll introduce you to those two later. Partner, eliminate those fallen angels and exorcists, then go after the demons. I want to go rest now, I'm sleepy. Cortana, keep up your act, D-Drake said to Issei and the virtual girl. All right, let's continue. Issei, prepare your weapons. I'll try to warn you if there's an ambush. D-Drake, I need you to help me keep an eye on the area to avoid any surprises, Cortana replied, activating the armor's invisibility ability. No problem. Besides, the pup had better not die. He still needs to build his harem and family, D-Drake replied, causing Issei to blush deeply and Cortana to feel annoyed, but they both maintained their composure. We'll discuss that later. The party's about to get a little explosive, Issei said seriously, preparing to launch his attack and change the subject. Understood, no problem, D-Drake and Cortana said in unison, while Issei was already on the ground floor. Meanwhile, at the meeting, the fallen angels and exorcists were enjoying themselves. One of the fallen angels took the bucket of drinks, ready to take them away so the party could continue. He then pulled out the champagne bottle, unaware that a rather subtle rope was attached to it, hidden from view, and connected to a large bundle of fragmentation and plasma grenades. And at the moment of pulling the bottle, he also removed the safety pin from the fragmentation grenade, hearing a click. Shit. Suddenly, the festive and fun atmosphere turned into a disaster zone. After the grenades exploded simultaneously, killing the poor guy holding the champagne bottle, they also killed everyone nearby. The shockwave, combined with the fragments, shrapnel from the grenades, killed anyone within a 10-meter radius. Most of the exorcists, regardless of their level, were dead, either from the shockwave or from the fragments that struck their bodies, and most of the fallen angels were seriously injured. The few who survived the attack were dazed and disoriented, some with ruptured ears from the blast. Others were among the rubble, and some who were unharmed were searching for the perpetrator when suddenly a red shadow appeared on the stairs. "Time to spill the blood," said the perpetrator of the attack, brandishing a pair of submachine guns and mercilessly gunning down the survivors. Those trapped in the rubble, the stunned, and the seriously wounded were the first to be mercilessly riddled with bullets, their bodies covered in 9 rounds. Most died without resistance, and the few exorcists who still had minor injuries or were only stunned tried to fight back, firing their AK-47, AR-15, Type 97, and G-36 rifles, but all missed. Due to the shockwave, their accuracy was poor, and the Spartan's armor provided additional protection, as the bullets merely ricocheted off the weapons instead of wounding him. With the last exorcist now killed by Issei, seeing that all the exorcists had been eliminated from this place, he now turned his attention to the fallen angels. The higher-ranking ones had recovered and looked at the most wanted man in front of their eyes, and they began to get restless. "It's the Red Spartan," shouted the representative of the fallen angels, pointing a light spear at him. Issei, now with his left hand, took the needler, and in his right his faithful energy sword, which displayed a plasma-edged blade of a blood-red color that made the Spartan look even more fearsome. "Very well. What do we have here? Filthy rats trying to kill each other or do their dirty work. You know, I pity you to see you in this state, so I'll grant you the peace of death." After those cold words, the Spartan, using the thrusters of his armor that propelled him to great speed, the armor's ability in Halo 4. In the blink of an eye, he decapitated a couple of fallen angels he had just been lifting from the rubble, splattering most of them with a jet of blood that looked more like fountains of water. The Spartan took advantage of the destroyed area to hide in other parts of the estate after part of the explosion destroyed the electrical system, plunging the entire place into darkness, save for the faint moonlight. But since they were supernatural beings with the ability to see in the dark thanks to their highly developed senses, they had no trouble seeing in the partial darkness. The problem was that the Spartan was using the destruction to hide, and strangely they couldn't sense his presence. All the fallen had to be on high alert to avoid any surprises. The low-ranking fallen, lacking much combat experience, became easy targets for the Spartan. Taking advantage of his armor's invisibility and his heightened senses, those of a dragon, thanks to the dragonification process he underwent over the years, he could see perfectly at night, his eyes like those of a dragon. He swiftly and silently assassinated the lower-level fallen, either by decapitating them, impaling them in the back, or cleaving their bodies in half horizontally or vertically. Fallen at medium and long range were brought down not by bullets but by red crystals, due to D-Drake's power. The crystals embedded themselves in their bodies, causing excruciating pain before exploding. This explosion dismembered some fallen, while others suffered severe lacerations and burns. None survived. They could only scream in agonizing pain as long as they remained alive. The fallen who were still alive were horrified by the brutal slaughter. There was no hesitation, there was no mercy, a scene like that of a predator hunting its prey, killing it without mercy. After several minutes of hunting, all the low and mid-level fallen were eliminated, except for the few higher-ranking ones, who were still alive but quite terrified to see their allies and subordinates die in such a gruesome way. Now they were alone and had to fend for themselves. Hunt the hunter or remain the prey was the situation they found themselves in. Running, hiding is not an option. You have nowhere to flee. This place will become the tomb of all of you. You only have the option of hunting the hunter or continuing to be the prey. That cold, icy voice echoed through the place, further alerting the fallen angels. How ironic life can be. You loved torturing, murdering, raping, and sodomizing your victims, especially innocent people, but now the tables have turned. Judging by your expressions, I see you find it amusing to be the ones now being hunted and tortured to death. The more the Spartans spoke, the more the tension increased among the fallen. They couldn't pinpoint the source of the voice, as it strangely seemed to come from all directions and nowhere at the same time. "Show your face, you damned coward. You think you're so brave, attacking from the SHADOWS. Face me face to face so I can have the pleasure of killing you personally. You're nothing but a coward. You attack from behind because you know you're no match for me." "Who is hiding?" Upon hearing that voice behind him, the fallen man tried to make space, but strangely his legs wouldn't respond. He looked down at his legs only to find a sword radiating pure energy and dripping blood, his blood. The sword had shattered his spine, preventing any movement from the waist down. "Damn you, Spartans!" The chestnut-haired man withdrew his sword from the fallen man, who, having no feeling in his legs, fell to his knees and proceeded to decapitate the unfortunate man, killing him instantly. "Three there, two more to go." The two remaining fallen angels were now truly horrified and decided to stand back to cover their blind spots. These two were the one giving the lecture at the meeting and one of the bodyguards. A crescent of reddish energy shot out from between the trees, heading straight for the two remaining fallen angels. One of them saw it coming and moved to the side of its trajectory. "Careful!" The fallen one cried out, but it was too late for his ally, who could only turn around and receive the direct impact that exploded on contact, instantly killing the winged being. It's heartbreaking watching your loved ones die before your eyes. Powerless to do anything, fear and helplessness are truly unsettling emotions now you're alone. Without allies or anyone to support you, what will you do? Will you beg like a coward for your life? Or will you gather what little courage you have left and fight to survive? The fallen man turned in the direction from which the voice had come. There, a few meters in front of him, was a suit of armor with military characteristics. Red in color, holding some kind of energy sword of the same color in each hand. The name of the possible person responsible for the death of his allies came to his mind. "Sekiryuutei," the fallen one said, hatred in his voice. "Consider yourself lucky, very few have the pleasure of seeing me after all. Most die before they even know I kill them," says the Spartan. "You damned wretch, you should have killed me while you were still hiding. Now that you've come out of hiding, I'll have the pleasure of killing you slowly and painfully. I'll enjoy making you scream in agony and pain. Don't bite off more than you can swallow, you could end up choking." Those words did not please the fallen one at all, who spread his 6 black wings and created a spear of light to hurl himself head-on at the Spartan. Issei waited until the fallen was close, his spear pointed directly at his heart. But the Spartan evaded the attack by twisting his body and with a swift movement, severed the arm with which the fallen held the spear. The winged creature cries out in pain at losing a limb. "Damn you, Sekiryuutei. I swear I will kill you no matter what it takes." The fallen man screams in anger as he holds himself up and squeezes the affected area tightly to stop the bleeding. "Then come and try it." Blinded by rage, the fallen figure creates a sword of light and launches another attack, delivering powerful thrusts that the boy easily dodges. Moreover, his anger leaves many openings in his defense, openings that Issei exploits after dodging a thrust, spins 360 degrees and severs one of the fallen figure's legs, causing him to fall to the ground. The fallen warrior screamed once more in agony from the overwhelming pain, as this time Issei, with Drake's help, increased the energy in the sword, causing it to not only sever the leg but also cauterize the wound. You damned wretch, who sent you to kill us? That shouldn't interest someone who's already dead." "It was those damn pigeons, wasn't it? Maybe yes, maybe no, the only thing that matters right now is that you're dead." After those words, the Spartan proceeded to end the life of the fallen angel by decapitating him. Seeing that there were no more enemies to kill, the young brown-haired man, feeling something was missing, went down to the event hall where the entire place was nothing but destruction and death, filled with piles of corpses of fallen angels and exorcists. Seeing that the briefcase full of euros and dollars, which had previously been the price demanded for his head, was still intact, and now that no one would claim the hefty reward, both he and his companions, along with Cortana and Drake, decided to take the spoils of war as a small bonus to their mission. With that, he took the briefcase full of money and put it in his dimensional pocket. Later, he would invest the money wisely for a good cause for the Spartan. Good. With this, the fallen angels and rogue exorcists have been eliminated. Cortana makes an appearance on the scene, in her virtual form. "Only the demons remain and the job will be complete," Cortana says. "Yes, now let's finish off the bats so we can go to sleep," says the dragon. "What tactics do we use so that this doesn't take us as long as the fallen and exorcists? I'm open to ideas," the chestnut-haired man asks. "To eliminate them quickly, we would need a heavy assault weapon," says the virtual girl. "It's time to make some noise and test the firepower of the Spartan laser and see how much damage it can do to the supernatural beings." Drake comments, "Well, that won't be possible, that little noisy wasn't brought," Cortana replies sarcastically, since using that weapon would be like saying, "Hey look, we're here." "Actually, Cortana, I did bring her," the Spartan said. "What?" says the virtual girl, somewhere between surprised and annoyed. Well, then it's time to go and make a racket, says the dragon excitedly at the idea of a nice boom, since after learning the range of said weapon it has become his favorite. Issei, how did you bring the Spartan laser? Cortana asks, clearly annoyed. In my defense, I'll say you never know if you might need a weapon with destructive capacity on a mission, so as a precaution I've always carried one, the chestnut-haired man replied. Ah, you never change. Fine, I'll let them use that toy this time, just this once, Issei. Do you understand? The virtual girl said, demanded in a warning tone. Loud and clear, the chestnut-haired man replies. Okay, now we need to move to Florence. According to what the Seraphim said, it's located southeast of here, a little over 270 kilometers away, and the Garia is located further east on the outskirts of the city, Cortana says. I understand to get there as quickly as possible, it's best to use the balance breaker. Some modifications to the Spartan armor are still needed to make it faster. I'll also need the BB to use the transfer and power up the Spartan laser's shots. The chestnut-haired man deactivates his Spartan armor to activate the boosted gear. Instantly, a red flash illuminates the area, and as it disappears, Issei dons a new red armor with gold details and gems in various parts. Spreading his dragon wings, he rises and takes flight to his new destination. Next stop, Florence. After saying this, the thrusters on the back of the armor gave a great boost, and after a few seconds, only a red dot could be seen moving away at great speed. I still find it hard to believe that this armor effortlessly reaches the speed of sound, Cortana remarks. In this world there are beings that can move at the speed of light, a speed that only the primordial class, that is, the elite among the elite, the celestial dragons and the highest-ranking gods can reach, the dragon comments. There's still so much I need to learn about this new world, says the virtual girl. Elsewhere in Italy, Florence, minutes later. After a brief flight at supersonic speed towards the city of Florence, and after circling the eastern outskirts of the city in more than one failed attempt to locate the demon's lair, they finally found it after Drake detected their energy signatures. Inside the house, a large number of demons could be detected. The group appeared to be more than 15, perhaps 20 to 23 street demons, ranging from low to middle class, nothing particularly noteworthy. They were based in one of the abandoned houses a couple of kilometers east of Florence, Italy. They were all gathered in one spot, which greatly facilitated the work of the young Spartan and his companions. This was the perfect moment to use every Spartan's secret weapon. The dreaded Spartan laser. This is going to be a nice boom, says the dragon very excitedly upon seeing imminent destruction. Savages. That's what Cortana said about her companion's destructive behavior. Well, it's not entirely strange considering we're both dragons. Being destructive is in our DNA to a certain degree. Besides, in the jobs I do, I rarely have the freedom to destroy anything, Issei argued in his and his partner's defense. You're absolutely right, partner. Dragons are a symbol of power and destruction, says Drake with pride and a certain degree of arrogance. Sure, whatever you say, the virtual girl replies with total sarcasm. Well, let's drop the conversation and take advantage of the fact that they haven't been detected yet. Issei pulled his cannon from his pocket dimension and after a few power boosts, transferred the energy to it, more precisely to the cannon's battery. He pointed it toward the abandoned house and with Promethean vision he could see the group of street demons inside. They were completely unaware of the imminent danger that threatened them. They would suffer a swift death. The cannon began to charge and emit small red beams. Once fully charged and pointed towards the house, in a count of 5 seconds the Spartan cannon was already at 10% of its destructive power. Without further ado, the chestnut-haired man fired a powerful energy beam at the house, completely destroying it and exterminating all traces of life in the place. Luckily for Issei, his dragon friend regulated the power transferred to the cannon to prevent it from exploding due to overload and also to avoid a loud bang from a massive explosion, as they didn't want to attract the attention of the area's inhabitants. Cortana is working on improving the laser to increase its power so it can withstand greater power transfers without the risk of exploding. Good, number of survivors 0. With this we conclude the mission with complete success, Issei said, satisfied with his work. That's right. So go down and change into the Spartan armor, call Miguel for payment and return to Kara to rest. As for me, I'm lazy and want to sleep, says the dragon boredly. Yes. Just give me a few seconds. The boy changed his clothes and proceeded to use that paper and summon the Seraphim. A glow appeared in the area when it disappeared. 2 people were visible, one known as Miguel, and the other unknown. The second person was a beautiful woman with long, curly blonde hair that reached her hips, a beautiful face worthy of an angel, blue eyes and hourglass figure, breasts that stood out even in her loose clothing, wide hips and long legs. Only the word beauty could describe such a beautiful angel. Issei was truly surprised by the blonde's level of beauty, a heavenly beauty, He would have been completely lost in thought if it weren't for the scolding of an annoying and jealous Cortana Didraig, for his part, laughed at the scene. It's lucky the Spartan armor came with a helmet, otherwise they would have seen your idiotic face when you saw the Seraphina. The dragon mocked its wearer. We meet once again, young mercenary. It's good to see you're perfectly fine, says Miguel. That's right, Miguel-san, and I see you've come with someone again. Anyway, the reason I called you is to inform you that the mission has been successfully completed. The fallen angels and rogue exorcists as well as the street demons have been eliminated, the Spartan said. The blonde man was taken by surprise. He hadn't thought he would finish the mission so quickly. At most, only a little over 2 hours had passed since he started it. Wow, that was fast. Even though you told me you finished quickly, I didn't think it would be that fast. It hasn't even been 3 hours, says the blonde. Well, the demons made my job much easier by all gathering in one place, so I eliminated them all in one hit with a somewhat destructive attack. Since entering that house and facing them all at once wasn't very sensible, and things wouldn't have ended very well for me, Issei replied. I understand. Feeling excluded, Gabriel cleared her throat to get their attention. Pardon me, young mercenary, I present to you my sister Gabriel, one of the seraphim of heaven. It's a pleasure to meet you. As my brother said, my name is Gabriel. The blonde woman enters with a slight bow. It's a pleasure to meet you, the Spartan replies. What's your name? I'm known as the Red Spartan. Wow, a curious name, but more than your name, it's your mercenary alias, says Miguel. That's correct. That's my professional name. Well, young Spartan, now that you've finished the mission, it's time to settle the payment, says Miguel. The Spartan recounted everything that had happened on the mission to the blonde angel, subtly avoiding the gruesome details out of respect for the blonde present. Meanwhile, Gabriel used his ability to read hearts on the brunette, and what a surprise he received. Strangely, despite his reputation as a mercenary, the brunette's heart held goodness, a perfect balance between good and evil, something truly rare in a being since very few can achieve such a thing, not even the fallen angels, who are both the closest and the furthest from light and darkness. After Miguel and the Spartan finished their conversation and easily agreed on the mission payment of $15 million, since the group of fallen included 5 high-level and 20 mid-level personnel, the blonde Seraphim accepted, deeming it fair. Seeing that his brother and the Spartan had finished their business, the blonde Seraphim, driven by curiosity, couldn't help but ask the boy a question. Young Spartan, may I ask you a question? The boy saw no problem and nodded. As a mercenary, you have a reputation for flawless missions and for being ruthless in your target elimination. I possess an ability that allows me to read people's hearts and discern whether they are good or evil. I apologize for doing something like this without your permission. Curiosity drove me, but I was astonished by what I read in your heart, a balance between good and evil, something truly rare. Only a few beings with millennia of existence could achieve such a balance between light and darkness. Furthermore, the fact that this evil cannot be described as dark is what surprises me most. Upon hearing what his sister had said, Miguel couldn't hide his astonishment. He understood Gabriel's curiosity about the mercenary's actions. After all, he didn't behave like a psychopath despite his reputation. He was polite and professional in conversation. Well, Miss Gabriel, I understand your curiosity about me. As you've told me before, my behavior or reputation on missions is the complete opposite of the impression I give when speaking with those who hire me. They often say they thought I'd be some crazy, violence-addicted person or someone with a questionable mental state. Don't apologize. It's not as if I were upset about you using your heart-reading ability on me without permission. Although I must say I am surprised by that ability, the Spartan replied to the Seraphim. I appreciate your understanding. I really couldn't help my curiosity, says the blonde Seraphim. Like I said, there's no problem. Young mercenary, I have a proposal I'd like to make to you. Miguel understood what his sister wanted to do and was genuinely surprised. He trusted her because if she was going to make him such a proposal, it was because she truly saw something in him. Issei, for his part, inside his armor, couldn't help but raise an eyebrow and simply nodded in response, allowing the blonde to continue. Upon hearing the Spartan's statement, Gabriel, before making the proposal, decided to explain everything related to the Drave Saints. Cortana listened attentively to the blonde's explanation, as she was intrigued by a system that could change a person's molecular structure. Something that wasn't even possible in her world, despite all their technology. Once the explanation was finished, the blonde continued. My proposal to you is, if you would like to be one of my brave saints. Issei was pleasantly surprised by the beautiful blonde's proposal. He never expected it to be a request to become one of her brave saints. Didraig was equally surprised. Also not expecting something like that, especially given the reputation of its wielder, Cortana was also taken aback by the proposal. After recovering from his astonishment, Issei gave his answer. First of all, I must say I wasn't expecting such a proposal, and I'm honored that someone like you sees me as worthy of your valiant saints, but I must decline your offer. It's not because I have anything against angels, it's just that I don't want to be tied to anyone, and I also don't want to stop being who I am. The blonde didn't bother to hide her sadness at the Spartan's negative response. I understand and respect your decision, although I was hoping for a positive response. I understand your disappointment, Miss Gabriel, but accepting your proposal would put your faction at risk. As a mercenary, I've made many enemies both from the natural and supernatural worlds. Furthermore, I wish to remain independent and neutral with respect to all factions. However, this doesn't preclude me from forming an alliance. I'm willing to help in any way I can. Although I've declined your proposal, I will continue to support you and your faction. I'm glad to hear that, the blonde said, smiling more brightly. To show that my proposal isn't just empty words, I'll show you my face and tell you my real name. After this, the armor the chestnut-haired man was wearing disappeared, reverting to a watch on his right hand. The pair of blonde men were surprised to see the boy without his armor. He really was very young to be a mercenary, a teenager at most, about 18 years old or younger, with brown hair and eyes of the same color, only a lighter shade, a well-built physique, about 175 or 178 meters tall. My real name is Issei Hyaudu. Mercenary with the alias Red Spartan, and I'm also the Sekiryuutei of this era, the boy concludes, calling out to his boosted gear as proof of his claim. After overcoming the initial shock, Miguel speaks up. Wow, this was a real surprise. I didn't expect to encounter the Sekiryuutei like this. I ask that my true identity remain just between the two of you. I want to remain anonymous for as long as possible, Issei said. You have my word, both blonde men reply. It seems my host has given you a nice surprise, Miguel, as well as your sister Gabriel. That voice, it's the voice of the Red Dragon, the blue-eyed blonde said in surprise. The same. Although I must tell you that I didn't expect you to make that proposal to my bearer, especially with the reputation that backs him up. Well, I can only say that his reputation loses relevance after what I could read in his heart. I understand. Well, so you could say that an alliance is forged between my host and the angels today. Quite curious, since no other host even considered this possibility. You're undoubtedly the most unconventional host in history. What can I say? It's always good to have an ally since you never know what life has in store for you in the future, Issei replied to his dragon companion's comment. Very well. In view of your honesty in revealing your true identity, I will also tell you a great secret. A secret known only to us seraphim and only to the leaders of the demons and fallen angels. That statement intrigued Issei pleasantly, and not only him, D-Drake and Cortana were also curious. This secret is that I, Michael, am the one in command of the angels, and this is because in the ancient Great War between the three Judeo-Christian factions, not only did the four original Mao and several of the Gregory leaders die, but in this ancient war my father, the biblical god, also died. Since then I have been in command of the angels, the blonde seraphim concludes. Issei was truly astonished by what Miguel had said. It was unbelievable what he was telling him. The biblical god was dead. He couldn't believe it. D-Drake and Cortana were equally shocked. Although the virtual girl wasn't aware of the entire supernatural world, thanks to the Red Dragon she knew several things, especially about the three biblical factions. Wow, so Elohim died. To be honest, I didn't expect it. Besides, it's strange, he had enough power to face the four Mao and Gregory cables without a problem. Even if he wasn't on par with Shiva, Indra, Odin, or the celestial dragons, he was someone of great power. We don't understand the reason for his death either, but his death is a reality. Likewise, young Sekiryuutei, I ask you to keep this information secret, said the blonde seraph. You have my word. Not a single word will pass my lips. Therefore, Michael and Gabriel, then the alliance between the angels and myself, Issei Hyaudu, Red Spartan and Sekiryuutei of this generation, is forged. The brunette says, extending his arm to the blonde man, seeking a handshake to seal the alliance agreement. That's right, young dragon. The alliance between the angels and the Sekiryuutei is agreed upon. Both the young Spartan and the seraphim shook hands, at least on Michael's part, while with Gabriel, although there was also a handshake, the brunette's was more subtle and delicate. A faint pink blush was visible on the blonde's cheeks, due to the comforting warmth she felt when taking the brunette's hand and also his warm aura. This action did not go unnoticed by Cortana and D-Drake. In the virtual girl it provoked jealousy, and in the dragon it provoked mockery since the harem was not far from beginning. Once the alliance was agreed upon, the seraphim, having successfully completed the mission, brought the Spartan back to Japan. In a flash, they vanished from the area, only to reappear in Q, at the same location where the mission meeting had been arranged. The two blondes said their goodbyes, Miguel waving while Gabriel kissed him on the cheek, an action that made the brunette blush noticeably and stirred Cortana's jealousy, while Drake laughed heartily. Miguel simply smiled, though in his mind the idea of a future sister was likely more than just a friend, perhaps the wife or fiancée of the young Sekiryuutei. Once the pair of blondes disappeared, Issei went home for a well-deserved rest after a rather exhausting day of work. All the way home, the brunette had to endure the dragon's teasing and Cortana's scolding for acting like a womanizer by flirting with the blonde seraphim. Yes, it was just another day in the life of the young Sekiryuutei Spartan. Okay, where do I begin? I know you're all trying to kill me and hang me after 2 or 3 months without updating this new fic. I don't blame you for wanting to kill me for not updating it, but I thought no one would prefer to see this new idea of fics based on Halo with DXD. It was an idea that popped into my head during one of the online Halo matches I was playing, and that's where the fic came from. Chapter 3. Back to training and a new mission, several weeks later. More than 3 weeks have passed since the so-called Spartan Sekiryuutei completed his mission after being hired by the Angel faction, which consisted of exterminating a group of renegade exorcists and low and mid-level fallen angels from Florence, and a group of wild demons installed in an abandoned building in Mal. And well, just as he had promised Miguel alias Michael, to finish this mission as quickly and discreetly as possible so as not to attract too much attention from the human population. And luckily for Issei, along with Drake and Cortana, they managed to carry out the tasks given by Michael, from the systematic assassination of the entire group of rogue exorcists and the fallen angels. He only had a slight setback with some mid to high level fallen. But nothing serious for Issei in using his beloved weapons such as the energy sword and the needler and some combat pistols, and silenced submachine guns. And as for the demons hiding in an abandoned house, well, luckily for the chestnut-haired man, they were all gathered in this house, and although he would have loved to use his dragon shot on them, he preferred to do it his way. Despite the complaints of an annoyed Cortana and the support of a happy Drake, he used the reliable Spartan laser, where in a few seconds with a powerful beam of red energy, he destroyed the place and every demon that inhabited it, making them disappear. Having completed his missions given by Michael, he flew back to a key location where the leader of the angels and his guard would be waiting for him, in case of an ambush by either demons or fallen angels. After a few minutes of flying, Issei arrived at the starting point where Michael was waiting for him along with a beautiful Seraphina with blonde hair, a beautiful figure, and a celestial gaze. The young brown-haired man was impressed by her beauty, which provoked a lot of jealousy from his virtual partner Cortana and from his partner Drake, who was dying of laughter at his partner's jealousy. Once Issei was reunited with Michael and his sister Gabriel, they were relieved to see the Sekiryuutei mercenary safe and sound. As promised, the brunette had completed the mission quickly and without any casualties or crossfire. Issei reported his successful assignments to Michael, and as promised, the blonde man gave him the payment for the mission. Although Gabriel was somewhat curious about his identity, he saw that they could be trusted, and upon receiving a promise not to divulge his secret identity, he removed his helmet, revealing his face. He showed that he was just a 17-year-old youth, but one already hardened by years of skirmishes against demons and fallen angels. This surprised the angels, who saw that this mercenary was nothing more than a young man, and not just any young man but the new user of the sacred gear and the title of Sekiryuutei. In response, Gabriel had proposed that he become her Joker of the Heart on behalf of the Seraphina. Although Issei found the idea tempting, he felt he had to keep a cool head as he still wanted to remain as neutral as possible. He rejected it as delicately as possible so as not to hurt the blonde. Maintaining her composure, she accepted the brunette's rejection but was saddened by not being in her faction. Issei explained why he couldn't join. It wasn't arbitrary, but rather that he didn't want to expose them to their natural enemies. Seeing that the Spartan Sekiryuutei had joined the Angel faction made them targets, and he didn't want to risk any more lives because of it. He preferred to remain as neutral as possible to avoid further conflict, but he could help them in an alliance where they would support each other. The Angels understood Issei's idea and accepted the alliance between him and their faction. After his meeting with Michael and Gabriel, Issei returned home where he had to endure the constant scolding of a jealous Cortana for Gabriel's celestial appearance and Drake's laughter. Issei had to bear this with a terrible headache as he thought about everything that had happened on his mission, his alliance with the Angels, but especially about the Seraphine Gabriel. He couldn't deny it, she was very beautiful, and he hoped that one day, when he wasn't on mercenary or assassination missions, he would like to get to know Gabriel better. During these weeks after completing this mission contracted by the Angels, Issei has had contracts with other subjects for ordinary missions, from assassinating street demons wandering the city, a fallen angel causing evil, or humans who are murderers, delinquents, rapists, sadists, criminals. For him, they were only prey for the Spartan Sekiryuutei, where he always killed them by decapitating them with his energy sword, wounding them with stingers embedded in their bodies, traumatizing them with gunshots or plasma blasts. Nothing out of the ordinary for Issei, who had these simple missions that helped him stay in shape and not rust, just like a Spartan in times of war. But now, after these weeks of simple missions for the chestnut-haired man, requests and difficulties were becoming scarce since, being a Spartan and a dragon, he loved having enormous challenges that would be impossible for anyone else to complete well. For him, it stimulated him to make those impossible missions easy. Now we found ourselves again at the Hayadu residence where it was around 12 noon. Hayadu was having lunch, a dish of tuna with cookies and some sushi, accompanied by his virtual partner Cortana, who was next to the brown-haired boy and D-Drake in his thoughts. What a boring day, it's been a while since I fought against someone stronger, Issei thought, while eating a salmon sushi roll while calmly watching the local news from the dining room. Good morning to all viewers, and if you're having lunch, enjoy your meal. We're reporting that yesterday, the mysterious vigilante once again attacked a criminal organization involved in organized crime and human trafficking. He mercilessly massacred the members of said organization, leaving no survivors. As always, the vigilante left no trace, causing fear among the criminal gangs that dominate Kyoto and its surroundings, who see them as their next target. The police have no leads on the whereabouts of the Kyoto vigilante. This is today's report. Hess partner always attracting attention. Luckily, no one in the human community will know your true identity, D-Drake commented to his brown-haired companion, who simply nodded at his dragon's remark while eating his lunch. As long as humans are okay, I won't care what they say about me as long as I do my duty, Issei said, not caring what they were saying about him in the media and on social networks. Luckily, you haven't attracted unnecessary attention, except from the Angel faction. As long as you keep a low profile and a cool head, we'll remain discreet in a territory dominated by several supernatural factions, Cortana said seriously to Issei and D-Drake, seeing that they were still keeping a low profile in front of the other factions. Come on Cortana, don't get so worked up. I know I shouldn't have gone overboard with them, but since you asked me to do it quietly and quickly, I did, so don't make too much of a fuss, okay? Issei reprimanded his virtual partner, who was giving himself a light tap on the head. Yeah, right, discreet. Like the last time you used a rocket launcher in a residence full of street demons and you could have eliminated them with a dragon shoot, but no, you decided to use the rocket launcher that D-Drake recommended, Cortana countered, and annoyed, reminding Issei and D-Drake of a previous mission where the brunette used heavy artillery. In my defense, Cortana, I think I should try the rocket launcher for the first time. Even though it's an ordinary weapon for any supernatural being, it's powerful enough to eliminate a whole contingent of street demons. And besides, there was no human or other supernatural presence in the area. Issei defended himself against Cortana's justified accusation, trying to calm her down, but it only made the virtual girl angrier. There are times when you'll need to use more tactics and less heavy weaponry, Issei. Sometimes I wonder if John's influence led you to use suicidal tactics or if it's hereditary, Cortana said with a sigh of frustration at seeing how the Master Chief's legacy has influenced Issei's character and personality. Okay, you two lovebirds, stop fighting. It's like watching a couple of lovers arguing, D-Drake commented in a nonchalant tone towards Issei and Cortana, which caused them to blush noticeably, making the red dragon of Wales laugh even more. What did you say, D-Drake/partner? Issei and Cortana asked the dragon angrily, but he remained unfazed by their murderous glares. Nothing, lovebirds, and this is the 1999th argument you've had this week, D-Drake calmly replied to his companions, who were completely stunned to see that D-Drake had once again counted the arguments that Issei and Cortana had had. Once again, they were wondering if the information D-Drake was giving them was true, or if he was just teasing them to anger them even more than they already were. Anyway, I don't want to argue, you lovebirds, since we're getting off topic. And Cortana is partly right. I know that using the rocket launcher or any heavy weaponry was excessive, but there are also times when you'll need to use the sacred gear and other abilities, D-Drake said seriously to Issei, who remained silent. But he was right about that, which relieved Cortana to see that D-Drake could support her for once. Thanks, D-Drake. Sometimes you surprise me by wanting to support me, Issei. I know you've been doing well on the last few missions, but I'm increasingly worried that you're limited in the skills taught by the Master Chief in terms of using the arsenal given to you. You also need to expand your repertoire more, like D-Drake's skills, melee combat, and more tactical skills that could save your life, Cortana said honestly to Issei, who remained silent after receiving such opinions from both her and D-Drake. I see I still have a lot to learn. Thank you, Cortana, for being so honest with me about my weaknesses, and thank you too, partner. I still want to improve my skills so I don't make mistakes and can become a great Spartan, Issei commented sincerely to his companions, seeing that there was still much to improve in his fighting style. D-Drake and Cortana smiled at him, especially Cortana, who appreciated that the brown-haired man might be stubborn, but he was also smart enough to see what his weaknesses and mistakes were. After continuing to chat and watching the midday news again while finishing lunch, he collected the plates and glasses that were on the table to begin cleaning them in the sink, since he had also gotten used to doing housework due to Cortana's teachings to be tidy at home, and that girl is quite strict regarding order and hygiene. After finishing lunch, the brown-haired boy went to train in the gym he had installed at home, something he was grateful to Cortana and Master Chief for since he could let off steam in his free time now that mercenary missions were becoming scarce. Issei needed something to kill time. Either he trained or went to the plaza to spend the afternoon. Several hours later, Hayadu residence. Once again, we found ourselves at Issei's residence in the gym after he had spent a few hours training to pass the afternoon. He had been training with aerobics, cardiopulmonary endurance, strength and speed, all under the watchful eyes of Cortana and D-Drake, who were keen to see that he was still taking his training seriously. This gave Cortana an idea which the Red Dragon of Wales noticed. "This smile tells me you've come up with an idea for Issei," D-Drake asked Cortana. "I had an idea about how to reach his limits without having to expose him on missions abroad. You remember a while ago when I asked Issei to create a virtual reality room in a basement room where he could recreate places for his virtual reality training?" Cortana replied to her dragon partner, who had to admit it was a good idea to see what his partner's limits would be. "And tell me, Cortana, what do you have planned for Issei? He's used to fighting fallen demons and other creatures. What makes you think you'll flank him with this?" D-Drake asked again, now a little more interested in the virtual girl's plans. Issei has already experienced fighting against supernatural beings like fallen angels or demons, but what he will face will force him to adopt new ways of fighting without relying too much on the weaponry given by the Master Chief. "Would you like to see him face the Covenant and the Flood?" Cortana responded and asked D-Drake again, attracting a little more interest about the Covenant and the Flood. "With whom do you plan to use Spartan 117's enemies so that Issei either continues using the tactics taught by the Spartan or returns with new teachings and ways of fighting without depending on a single style he is used to?" D-Drake replied to Cortana's nod, understanding what Cortana was planning to do for Issei. "That's right, D-Drake. I hope you'll be there observing Issei's strengths and weaknesses on this mission so we can see how his new training will go these days when there are no mercenary missions for him," Cortana told D-Drake, as she also wanted to support her partner in improving and perfecting his Spartan training. "Okay, I'll help you with Issei, but I have something else in mind. Not only will you and I be observing Issei, but 2 other acquaintances of mine will also be supporting us with his analysis," said D-Drake, drawing Cortana's attention to the mention of 2 acquaintances by the Red Dragon of Wales. For a few seconds, Cortana was thinking and thinking until suddenly a small click occurred in her head, reminding her of D-Drake's partners, which made Cortana a little jealous when she remembered one of them. "Belzerd and Elsha will also be observing Issei D-Drake's virtual mission," Cortana asked D-Drake in a tone that was both annoyed and jealous, and he nodded without fear of the girl's jealousy. "Of course, I was able to contact them after the mission in Italy, both Belzerd and Elsha, and they are aware of the progress their new successor has made. Although they admit he has excelled, they can still improve in terms of strategies, tactics, magic handling, boosted gear, and hand-to-hand combat." D-Drake answered honestly to Cortana, even though he didn't like the idea of meeting Elsha, thinking she would be another woman who would fall in love with Issei. If she already got very jealous remembering when she saw Seraphina Gabriel, and now upon meeting Elsha, something told her that she should keep a close eye on Elsha if she tried to seduce the brown-haired boy. But he hated to admit it, but he would need more help to convince Issei to return to his new training and improve it to a better level. So for once he decided to accept D-Drake's partners, just hoping that everything would turn out well. "Ah, well, D-Drake, I'll accept Belzerd and Elsha's help with this observation. We just want to support Issei and help him become more well," Cortana said with a sigh to D-Drake, who nodded in response. "Don't worry, Cortana, I'm sure Issei can tolerate another training session from us, and besides, I know Issei well and I'm sure he'll like to try new challenges to test himself," said D-Drake, supporting Cortana about the next training session for Issei. "Thanks for the support, D-Drake. You can be a little exasperating sometimes. But you're a good partner. Well, D-Drake, we need to talk to Issei now," Cortana said, preparing everything to speak with the brown-haired man and see if he would accept this new mission. "You're welcome, Cortana, and here we go again," said D-Drake, accompanying Cortana to contact Issei again now that they were resting after training hard in the personal gym. Once Issei was sitting on the wall, he was thinking about what mission he could offer him to keep him active. "Hey partner, everything all right?" D-Drake asked Issei and he nodded, still lying down. "Everything all right, D-Drake, I'm just resting. You two were taking your sweet time talking to me," Issei said to his companions, and they stared at each other. We were just planning what mission might be interesting. Tell me something. Issei, would you like to have a virtual reality mission against new enemies that were a torment to the Master Chief? Cortana asked, drawing Issei's attention to what would be a new challenge. I'm listening, Cortana, what's this mission about? Issei replied, now more interested in knowing what the mission would entail. Alright Issei, what I'm about to tell you is extremely important, and once you accept it, there's no turning back on the virtual reality mission, Cortana said very seriously, to which Issei nodded. I understand, I won't back down. Even if I have no ammunition, I will fight until my last breath if necessary, Issei said, extremely determined to complete this mission. I'm glad to hear you're engaged. Well, the mission will be about. Several hours later, in an unknown place. Completely dark was this place where the brown-haired man, now dressed in his crimson-red Spartan armor, wielded only his MA-5C assault rifle with a capacity of 32 bullets, along with his reliable M6G Magnum pistol with a capacity of 8 bullets, and of course, the energy sword wielded at his waist along with some fragmentation grenades and plasma grenades on his belt. This place was quite dark and quiet, which the brown-haired man didn't like very much because, thanks to his intuition and experiences in previous missions, he had always sensed that this was the perfect setting for an ambush. Therefore, Issei turned on some built-in lamps on each side of his helmet, which illuminated a bit of that gloomy place. It was clear that this place was more like a completely modernized underground area, with large steel pillars covered in rock as decoration, and several large shelves that seemed to be part of a huge library. Upon noticing how enormous this place was, Issei decided to contact his partner Cortana and Drake through his integrated communicator in his armor and boosted gear. Issei, report to me here, Cortana, the brunette commanded his virtual partner. But there was no response from Cortana, which surprised Issei a little. Cortana always responded to him, either with sarcastic or direct comments, but this time there was only a silent silence that reigned in the place. Drake, report me, partner, are you awake? Answer me, Drake, Issei asked again in an orderly tone to his partner, waiting for him to respond. And just like Cortana, there was no response for Issei, who was starting to get a little worried about not having any communication from either Cortana or Drake. Something was amiss, very bad around here, which put Issei on alert, putting himself on guard and keeping a high profile with his assault rifle pointed to each side, which he illuminated with his lamp. Emmett, it's not normal for this place to be without communication or for absolute silence to reign. Whatever the case may be, I have to continue communicating with Cortana and Drake, Issei thought seriously as he continued walking cautiously with his rifle, pointed at every place that was illuminated by his lamp. The Spartan continued walking through what appeared to be the library's ground floor, where with each step he noticed slivers of light on the walls and in the ventilation area at the top of the ceiling. He also saw what appeared to be an open exit from the library. That's strange. Every time I pass by, the lights in the place gradually turn on. Something here doesn't add up, Issei commented to himself, continuing on his way while guided by the little light that illuminated the first floor of the library. As Issei continued walking, he kept trying to communicate with either Cortana or Drake, but without success until something stopped him. Suddenly, a strange noise began to be heard coming from the fan tubes above the ceiling, which immediately alarmed Issei, who pointed his assault rifle at the fans. What the hell is that? Issei asked himself, pointing at the fans, when suddenly more and more noises coming from the fans became much louder and closer to the place. Then suddenly one of the first fan tubes began to move, revealing a strange, lumpy, grotesque creature shaped like a balloon with stubby legs, deformed tentacle-like arms, and an insect-like mouth. Its color was a light brown, more like khaki. Guess who those creatures are? Those who have already played Halo 1 CE and Halo 3 will know who those annoying creatures belong to. What the hell are those things? Issei exclaimed, seeing the creature that noticed the brown-haired boy's presence and slowly approached him, putting him on guard and pointing its rifle at him. Whoever you are, stop right now or I will be forced to destroy you, Issei ordered the creature that was making some rather disturbing noises as it continued walking towards him. Seeing that this creature did not obey the order, Issei opened fire, spraying the creature with bullets that took the full force of the attack and halted its advance. But his relief didn't last long. What would happen next? Suddenly, this creature began to swell up when it was shot in the form of a large balloon about to burst. It fell to the ground and exploded, causing a great crash in the place that Issei felt as he felt the shockwave from that creature. Cough cough, damn kamikaze creature, that really hurt, Issei said, feeling the shockwave that had hit him, but he withstood it long enough to notice another unpleasant surprise received from the creature. After committing suicide, she had inside her small creatures in the form of mini balloons shaped like bacteria with many khaki-colored tentacles with dull yellow, and there were not just one, but dozens of these small creatures that without any warning threw themselves at Issei and he reacted by shooting them. Damn creatures, take that Issei said, shooting at the creatures, which luckily were very weak and burst like water balloons just by shooting them. Seeing that there was no longer any danger, and that his rifle magazine had run out, he reloaded with a new clip of bullets ready for another round. Thank goodness these creatures are weak against bullets. If only Cortana or Diedreg were here to keep an eye on this place, Issei muttered to himself, resuming his journey after having eliminated the creature. But suddenly his instincts told him to turn around immediately, and Issei turned around and saw more and more of those chubby creatures walking towards him, planning to self-immolate with the brown-haired boy. Damn, are these creatures more cunning or more suicidal? Issei said when he saw these creatures returning the fire towards the creatures, and they simultaneously exploded a few meters behind the Spartan, releasing their small creatures that threw themselves wildly at the Spartan. Seeing that he was surrounded by these, Issei decided to throw a fragmentation grenade at the small bacterial creatures, which were exterminated by the explosion, giving a great sigh of relief to the brown-haired boy. Seeing that he had eliminated a large part of those creatures, Issei decided to go further towards a door which, luckily for the brown-haired boy, was open and out of the kamikaze enemies. Just as he was about to lean against the wall to reload his rifle, he felt his communicator working again. Cortana, Diedreg, can you hear me now? Issei asked again into his communicator, hoping there was contact with his companions. Issei/partner, Cortana and Diedreg responded in unison to their partner, who saw that he had already encountered some very dangerous opponents. Finally, I'm glad to see you all connected here, Issei commented, relieved to have contact with his companions, and the feeling was mutual between Cortana and Diedreg. I'm also glad to see you, partner, but I see these new opponents are giving you a hard time. I hadn't seen such danger. Diedreg, I've never seen anything like this. I've never faced this type of enemy, these explosive kamikazes. Do you have any information about them? Issei asked his companions, asking if they had any information that could help them on this mission. Diedreg had no valuable information about those enemies, but Cortana apparently did and decided to explain it to the chestnut-haired man. Issei, these enemies are the Flood, very dangerous enemies that John had to face in the battles of Installation 4 and 5, Cortana replied seriously, and both Issei and Diedreg listened attentively. The Flood? Issei asked, somewhat bewildered as he had never heard of such creatures. Cortana gladly decided to explain who they were. The Flood are parasitic organisms created over 10 million years ago, apparently by the precursors. They survive by consuming sentient life forms with sufficient biomass. The Flood were able to consume much of the life in the galaxy and have been natural enemies of the Flower Runners, the Covenant, and the Alliance, but the Chieftain is their most formidable enemy. They have fought bloody battles among the rings and on Earth. Believe me, these enemies were far more dangerous than the Covenant itself. What else can you tell me about them, Cortana? Issei asked his companion again, and she continued with her explanation about the Flood. There are several types of Flood. Among the most basic, the small bacteria-like forms are the parasitic Flood. This is the standard Flood army, where they spread the infection and consume any living being, devouring it and turning it into an undead creature. Their method of attack is to throw themselves at any living being and convert it, but don't worry, they are easy to defeat. Any weapon, be it a pistol, shotgun, or explosive, will easily take them down. The next form is their combat form. This Flood is the mutant form of the human, elite, and brute races. First, the individual is paralyzed and used by the host. In all cases, the Flood plays around with its new body. These are the backbone of the Flood, as they are the most aggressive and dangerous due to their diminished humanity and extreme ferocity in killing. They will use the whips on their arms to strike you and any weapon they can get their hands on, be it a pistol, rifle, or rocket launcher. The best strategy against these adversaries is to defeat them from a distance with any weapon, such as the plasma rifle or shotgun. If you are forced into a fight when surrounded by Flood, use the energy sword to cut them down. Finally, there are the Flood carrier forms. These attack forms inflict no damage in combat. They are clumsy and very slow because they are walking eggs that go into suicide mode in front of an enemy to release a handful of infection forms. They can jump very short distances and fall easily. They only cause damage when they explode. The carrier forms have no weak point since the infection forms are protected. But with any more powerful weapon, be it a shotgun, rocket launcher, or grenade, you can take them down if you maintain a considerable distance to prevent them from releasing their parasitic forms. That was the entire explanation given by Cortana, which left them speechless, not only because of the latent threat they were facing, the Flood, but also because of the vast amount of information Cortana had provided. Each time, they were more surprised by what an enormous encyclopedia Cortana could be. Perhaps sometimes they had to listen to Cortana. This will be a big problem because of the wide variety of enemies we have to face, Issei. Now, I agree with Cortana that you must plan a strategy to get out of this place alive. And another thing, your ammunition is limited, and you'll have to use the booster gear option and the magic you still have in reserve in the worst-case scenario when you run out of ammunition. Drake commented to Issei, considering the options in this situation he had gotten himself into. Cortana, do you have the location map for this place? Issei asked his partner, and she checked her database to see if there was a map available for the brunette. I'm sending you in your armor where you can see what level you're on, and it seems you're on the ground floor of an underground library, Cortana said, sending the blueprints to the armor. Issei could see them through his helmet, which showed his current location and indicated that there were about 3 more floors above. Okay, Cortana and Drake, this is going to be much more complicated than expected with these flood. Well, I'd better get going, Issei said sincerely to his companions, and they were somewhat pleased that the brown-haired boy sometimes accepted the advice of others rather than following hunches and instincts. And just as he was preparing to go to the next door on the other side of the room, more of those floods were heard approaching loudly, alerting Issei and his companions, who saw that those floods would be an annoying thorn in this mission. Issei, I detect a lot of flood activity all around, and they're waiting to ambush you, Cortana informed Issei, who remained silent as he checked all around and those creatures still hadn't arrived. Without further ado, Issei put away his assault rifle and pulled out his M90 shotgun with a 6-round 12-gauge cartridge capacity and a built-in flashlight. Thanks for the information, Cortana. Now there's no time to lose, Issei said, starting towards the door on the other side. But just as he was about to walk east, a flood in elite combat form suddenly appeared behind where Issei was hiding and instinctively threw a fragmentation grenade at the Spartan's feet. Partner Issei. Drake and Cortana shouted simultaneously, alerting Issei to the thrown weapon, but it was too late for the brown-haired boy. Damn it, Issei said as he saw the grenade and couldn't react in time to dodge it. Suddenly, this grenade exploded with extreme violence, sending Issei flying east where he abruptly fell to the ground due to the grenade's explosion. This was noticeable because his armor began to lose its energy shields, and a warning of a traumatic injury from the grenade's explosion appeared. Damn grenade and damn flood, arg and damn wound, that's nothing, Issei said, wincing from the impact of the grenade that had caused a wound in his battle armor, feeling everything vibrate and feeling dizzy from the effects of the grenade's explosion. Spartan Sekiryuutei could barely stand, in great pain from the injury caused by the grenade. Arg, luckily the energy shields were at 100% capacity, otherwise it would have been useless, Issei said, still in pain from the recently exploded grenade, and slowly got up from the ground, still holding the affected part and his shotgun with the other. Even with a lot of pain from the wound, Issei is already standing to hear more and more of those flood approaching here, so he prepares a fragmentation grenade and his loaded shotgun to smash any flood that opposes him. And without any provocation, dozens of flood appeared in waves in combat form, whether human, elite, and accompanied by the parasitic form, along with some flood carrier form, where they saw an injured Issei and took advantage of the opportunity presented by these creatures to kill him. But he hadn't counted on the chestnut-haired man, still in great pain, firing his shotgun at every flood that approached him, tearing them to pieces with the shotgun pellets. There were even other flood approaching them from behind the Spartan, and he reacted by taking his magnum pistol from his waist and riddling the flood who were planning to ambush them with bullets at point-blank range. With the last flood now finished off on this floor, Issei knelt down, sore from so much shooting and from the wound that was slowly healing, but the damage was already done. Damn floods, they're a real pain. I don't know how Master Chief managed to survive against such enemies and come out unscathed, Issei said, reloading his shotgun and magnum pistol with a new magazine. Once he had loaded his weapons, Issei looked around again to see if there were any more floods to surprise him, and to confirm that the fallen floods were really dead, which he confirmed when he saw that the few floods that tried to get up were torn to pieces by Issei's quick attacks with the energy sword. Now that the ground floor area was secured, the brown-haired man decided it was time to leave this cursed place in one piece and headed towards the next door on the other side of the room, but still on high alert for the imminent threat of any flood that might ambush him. Faced with this, Issei checked the map again and confirmed that there were several paths to the door where he could see that it was a long passageway that he would have to travel. Cortana, can you hear me? Drake. Damn it, I'm alone again. Issei cursed himself as he realized he had lost communication with Cortana and Drake once more due to the fragmentation grenade explosion. Seeing that he would be alone with his weapons, the map, and the boosted gear, Issei continued his tour of the library, hoping to reach the top floor safely and leave in one piece. I just hope I have a peaceful journey like in the other missions, the brown-haired man thought as he walked through the passageway, hoping not to encounter any more of these floods. While Issei continued with this hellish mission, someone was following him, and luckily he couldn't sense their presence, as they wanted to observe the progress of this new Spartan and see if he was a match for Spartan 117. That new Spartan is an interesting subject whom I wonder if he'll be able to get out of this place unscathed. Well, he just needs to put it into practice, the subject thought in a robotic male voice, luckily floating to remain unnoticed as he followed the Spartan Sekiryuutei. Several minutes later, after traversing several passageways and paths where, as was customary for Issei, he encountered more intense waves of flood and more flood in parasitic form, carrier form, and especially the human and elite combat form. The latter have caused many problems by being much more hostile and much more savage when attacking using whatever they had at hand. Luckily, Issei managed to take them all down with his shotgun at close range, finishing them off in groups, while with his magnum at a considerable distance he took down every flood that came near him, and as if his life depended on it, he reloaded both the shotgun and the magnum. But he was also worried that with each flood that fell, his ammunition was running out at an alarming rate. Just as he was about to continue on his way, he came across a huge metal door that appeared to be blocked, as he saw that it was very tightly sealed, as if something was preventing something from getting out. "Oh great, just what I needed. Well, Didraig gave me free rein to use the booster gear to force my way through that huge door," Issei said as he stowed his shotgun on his back while still holding the magnum in his right hand just in case. In response, he summoned his sacred gear in his left hand, where it began to glow much brighter than usual. "Alright, it's time to use Didraig's power on that door," Issei said, pointing his hand at the door, which soon began to glow a crimson-red color in the palm of his hand. But just as he was about to shoot, someone stopped him. "Wait a moment, don't destroy my Spartan facility," shouted the same robotic voice, but this time with an altered tone as if of fear, and Issei saw a floating object in the shape of a sphere with a blue lens. Upon seeing that machine, Issei pointed his magnum at it, but it remained unfazed by the Spartan's defensive move. "Stop right there. Identify yourself now." He ordered the machine in a cold tone, but it continued to ignore the Spartan and headed towards the door where he launched a blue energy beam towards it, unlocking it. "My name is of no importance, Spartan, and please don't get lost in this place, as this door is the first of 10 that I will have to open," the machine replied indifferently to the Spartan, who said nothing as he saw that the machine had unlocked the door. But he was baffled that there were more than 10 locked doors. "This mission will be hell." "Alright, you can continue your journey now, Spartan," said the machine as it left the place, leaving Issei alone again, who continued his journey but still with the following thought. "Thank you for the support. Well, let's continue with this mission," Issei said as he continued to explore the library. Little did they know that things were about to get worse. Several hours later, after going through more than 5 floors from the ground floor to the 5th floor of that underground library, it has been hellish for Issei not only because of how extensive and long this library turned out to be, but also because of how well defended it was. The whole damn place was completely filled with flood in all their forms: parasitic, carrier, and combat. At each level, they were much more savage and offensive, and they didn't hesitate for a second to attack him with all their power. Things went from bad to worse because each time the machine or monitor unlocked a door, more flood became more hostile and unpredictable. Some were now wielding much more dangerous and effective weapons, such as the M90 shotgun, M7 submachine gun, BR-55 HB battle rifle, and M6S Magnum pistol, and of course the MA-5C assault rifle used by the infected humans. The Covenant Flood combat elites were armed with everything from needlers, plasma pistols and rifles, carbines, spikers, and brute cannons. Worse still, some were even armed with energy swords, plasma cannons, and rocket launchers. These last weapons were found on the upper levels of the floors that Issei had to traverse while battling the flood. Another factor that was torture for Issei was the ammunition for his weapons, which was beginning to run out alarmingly. His reliable shotgun had run out of ammunition, and the ammunition that could be returned from the flood was scarce, especially for his assault rifle and the Magnum. Issei hated to admit it, but he would have to use the strategy that Cortana always urged him to use. And this time he decided to listen to her and planned a strategy which was to disappear when he noticed that the flood sensed his presence when he made noise or used his firearms that caused noise. So it was better not to use it, and to mislead them as best as possible and save so much strength and ammunition. With each level he passed, he encountered more flood, and seeing that he didn't want much unnecessary attention from those disgusting creatures, he used his energy sword and melee combat, where he used his strength with his boosted gear gauntlet to quickly get rid of the flood and continue his journey. Luckily, in his passageway, he found an emergency first aid kit where he could use biofoam, a kind of self-sealing agent. He placed it on the internal wound of his armor, still damaged by the grenade explosion, and was able to seal it, relieving some of his discomfort for a while and recovering the strength he had lost. And after many battles and escapes from the flood, Issei had reached the last blocked door that prevented him from reaching the top floor, where he hoped to communicate with either Cortana or Didraig. "Just one more door and I'll be out of this library nightmare," Issei said to himself, hoping the floating machine would open the door and he could escape the underground trap. But suddenly, that noise again. More waves of those flood, but now armed with rocket launchers and heavy weaponry. Oh great, the day is getting more interesting every day, Issei commented sarcastically upon seeing the flood armed with rocket launchers. With no other options, I threw a couple of fragmentation grenades into the air where they landed at the feet of a battalion of floods, and simultaneously the grenades wreaked havoc on them, taking down most of them who were carrying grenades. Seeing the chaos he had caused, Issei grabbed the shotgun with its last cartridges and attacked without hesitation every flood that remained alive. Shot after shot, Issei mercilessly riddled the flood with bullets, which they tried to fire back with whatever they had at hand, but it was useless against the brutal offensive given by the Spartan Sekiryuutei. And seeing that his shotgun had run out, he decided to use his assault rifle as well, riddling every flood that remained alive with bursts of fire. After using up 5 assault rifle magazines consecutively, Issei stopped shooting at them when he saw that they had all fallen to the merciless attack left by the brown-haired man, but also another setback for him. 2 of his main weapons were out of ammunition, and he only had his magnum, some fragmentation grenades, and the energy sword left. This door is the only way I can escape these flood, Issei said as he stowed his unloaded weapons on his back and took his magnum in his other hand, loading it with a new clip. The instant he loaded his weapon, the monitor reappeared to open the last door for him, and he looked at the Spartan upon seeing that he was still alive. I'm glad you're still alive, Spartan, but now everything depends on you go to the top of a downed transport and wait until reinforcements arrive. The machine told the Spartan, who was surprised that the machine had warned him that reinforcements would arrive soon. But he was worried that he would have to endure much more punishment by holding out in this place a little longer for reinforcements to arrive, and he only had a few weapons left to resist a new onslaught from the flood. Seeing that they didn't have many options, Issei decided to gamble everything on the fact that the door had already been unlocked and went outside where he noticed that it was night in a small, dense jungle, where he could take advantage of that. And he did so upon noticing that the place was well defended by some flood in combat form. Therefore, Issei decided to eliminate them one by one with the energy sword if he was at close range, and at a distance with the magnum where he could advance while throwing the last grenades he had left to annihilate any flood that was still alive. After an exhausting half-hour of enduring attacks from the flood, he had come across a downed ship Pelican in the middle of the dense jungle where he could take refuge and wait for the reinforcements promised by the monitor. With the last clips for his energy pistol and sword, he endured from the downed Pelican the last attack sent by the flood, where Issei was increasingly exhausted as he saw that each onslaught was more aggressive and violent than he was used to. Faced with this, Issei prepared his last clip and his sheathed sword in his other hand, ready for his final battle against the flood that were slowly approaching. Well, I have nothing left to lose, Issei said, pointing at the last flood that approached him. Without any reaction, the Spartan unloaded his last bullets at the flood who fell dead from the gun's bullets and quickly drew his sword, cutting down each flood that survived the shots. Some of them tried to attack him from behind, and he reacted by giving them a reverse kick and a sword cut. With the last flood now fallen, Issei saw that his pistol had run out of ammo and he saw a final wave of floods heading towards him. All he had left was his energy sword and a fragmentation grenade. Things weren't looking good for the brown-haired boy. Oh damn it, these things are immortal, Issei said, annoyed at the sight of the flood heading towards him and not with good intentions. And just as this was going to be the end for Issei, suddenly more machines similar to the monitor that had helped him open the gates appeared in the skies, but these began to attack the flood with a red beam that pulverized the flood as if it were nothing. When Issei saw that the promised reinforcements had arrived, he breathed a sigh of relief that this nightmare was finally over. At this moment, the monitor that had helped him during this mission appeared. Greetings, Spartan, I am the monitor, Guilty Spark 343, or better known as the Oracle, the so-called Oracle said to Spartan Sekiryuutei, who was still looking at him. Thank you for your help, Oracle. I appreciate the help you've given me during this hellish mission, Issei said, thanking the Oracle. It was nothing, Spartan. As I said, I've been observing you and I see that you're on par with Spartan 117. But now I must take you to some people who want to meet you, the Oracle said to Issei. Without any warning, Issei was surrounded by golden energy, and like the monitor, they were teleported to an unknown location. Meanwhile, the Oracle's sentinels withdrew from the area after exterminating the remaining flood. This nightmare was finally over, or maybe not, meanwhile in an unknown location. Again in a completely white place, so white that it cannot even excuse any sound, as if there were no one alive in this place. The floor was also white and all around there was nothing, as if this place knew no end. Upon seeing that he was in a desolate place, Issei again drew his energy sword, as it was the only weapon he had left since the others had run out of ammunition, as well as his fragmentation or plasma grenades. Cortana, can you hear me? Issei asked his virtual partner in an orderly tone, checking if there was any communication in this place, without any success. TCHH Cortana D-Drag, can you hear me? I asked Cortana and D-Drag again without success once more. Issei was now beginning to worry about where he was in this place so empty and devoid of life. And then Issei remembered the monitor who had helped him on his previous mission. Guilty Spark 343, are you here? I asked again, now to the monitor who helped me in the library mission, where I expected some response or that someone was alive in this desolate place. Seeing that there was no one from this place, Issei walked for a few minutes trying to take things in and see where his companions could be. I keep wondering where Cortana and Drake are, even on the monitor. Issei thought about where his companions were who were supposed to be there after this mission ended. And just as Issei deactivated his energy sword to store it in his belt, he sensed a presence somewhat perceptible to the brown-haired Spartan. So you survived and made it this far. You're an interesting person, Sekiryuutei, said a very soft female voice from behind the Spartan who jumped slightly. Issei turned around to see where the voice had come from, but there was nothing. There was nobody from this place. The stress from so many missions is already affecting me, Issei thought to himself, seeing that so much stress from the missions was already affecting him physically and emotionally. And once again Issei felt another different presence. I see you've survived the test. It seems you still have a long way to go, but you're on the right track, Sekiryuutei said a voice. But now a deep masculine one that startled Issei once again, causing him to sheath his energy sword and turn around. And there was no trace of those voices, so Issei remained still as he sheathed his sword and again tried to communicate with Cortana, Drake, or the monitor. Until again, not just one but two presences appeared behind him. Issei didn't hesitate twice and again unsheathed his energy sword, turning around, and to his surprise, this time he came across two people he had never seen before. The first subject was a fair-skinned man with a serious and stern expression, medium-length hair that reached his neck, standing 190 meters tall with a slender build. He was dressed in the style of a general, wearing black clothing with light blue embroidery, a red trench coat with yellow details and matching trousers and combat boots. The next one was a beautiful young woman, 20 to 22 years old, with a gentle and tranquil expression, fair Caucasian skin, sapphire blue eyes, and long, wavy light blonde hair that reached her back. Her clothing consisted of a long purple dress that showed off her beautiful figure, especially her bust and waist. She wore a pair of white heels and a kind of tiara on her head. He stood frozen upon seeing these two people, just sensing their presence was so overwhelming that he saw two great opponents on par with Drake, but his perception of them was one of tranquility rather than hostility, giving the brown-haired man a respite. Yufufu, I see he was surprised to see us, the woman commented with a soft smile to Issei, who blushed at the sight of the beautiful woman. I'm surprised the rookie has survived this far, the man remarked sarcastically to Issei, who raised an eyebrow even though he was still wearing his Spartan helmet to hide his expression. Who are you two? Issei asked cautiously to the two subjects who had seen the Spartan Sekiryuutei, noticing that he remained cautious upon seeing them. Relax, kid, we won't do anything to you, we just came to talk, said the blue-haired man to Issei, who calmed down to see that he wasn't hostile but still didn't let his guard down. Haven't you answered my question yet? Issei asked again to the two subjects who still hadn't given their names to the Spartan. As I see, Drake-chan, you forgot to mention us, said the blonde, surprising Issei that they knew of Drake's existence. And just as Issei was about to speak again to ask them, a voice recognized by Issei and the subjects made them very familiar. Hey, don't blame everything on me, Blizzard and Elsha. I already told Issei about you, but he forgot because of all the stress on missions, Drake replied simply, causing Elsha and Blizzard to laugh a little, while Issei was annoyed that his partner had appeared at this moment. Either he was asleep or ignoring him or both. Oh, hello, Drake, I'm glad you contacted us with the new Sekiryuutei, and I see you've chosen the new user well, Blizzard said to both Drake and Issei in a calm tone. I'm also glad to see you, Drake-chan, Elsha said happily upon hearing Drake's voice again. Drake, who exactly are they, please, I asked again, but now for Drake to know who Blizzard and Elsha were. I would like to know too. Drake. Cortana had also surprisingly intervened, appearing behind Issei with a serious look that intimidated the brunette. Let's see, the first is Blizzard, one of the many booster gear users who wielded it during the Renaissance. Of English origin, he was a legendary user who fought in the Wars of the Roses, where he consolidated the power of the Tudors and kept the Kingdom of England strong. Elsha, on the other hand, is the second booster gear user from the medieval era during the Norse Wars, where she holds the title of the Crimson Norse Dragon for her heroic deeds against the other Norsemen. Both Elsha and Blizzard are among the few users who have achieved the status of the best booster gear users to have ever existed, Drake explained, detailing the stories of Blizzard and Elsha to Cortana and Issei. Many were surprised to find that the legends Drake had told them were true. They never expected to encounter Drake's former users in person. In truth, there were things that surprised him every time. Yufufu, I see our presence surprised you. Don't worry, we're here in peace as we wanted to meet Cortana and Issei in person, Elsha said calmly with a smile that made Issei blush again, which Cortana noticed and caused her to give the poor brunette a murderous look, causing Drake and Blizzard to laugh. Okay, everyone calm down now that we're all gathered here. We brought you here so we could talk seriously, Issei, said Didraig or Cortana to Issei, drawing the brown-haired boy's attention to why he was there in his subconscious. Now that everyone was paying attention to what Didraig wanted to say, Elsha, Blizzard, Cortana, and Issei gathered to see what the Welsh dragon would have to say to them. Well, before we begin, it's a pleasure and an honor to meet you for the first time, Blizzard and Elsha. I've heard a lot about you from Didraig, Issei said respectfully in Blizzard's presence. Blizzard nodded with a smile, while Elsha smiled back affectionately, further increasing the brunette's blush. The feeling is yours too, Issei, Blizzard and Elsha said in unison, also happy to meet the new user of Didraig. Well, partner, I know you're wondering why this mission. Let's call it hellish, complicated, and suicidal. In short, well, Cortana and I planned it, Didraig said to Issei, revealing that this mission was not random at all, but rather planned by his companions. And before the chestnut-haired man could ask Didraig again, Cortana decided to interrupt him. We did it to see your weaknesses and see your breaking point, and I see that we succeeded, Cortana said to her partner, leaving Issei a little astonished to see that she and Didraig had planned that simulated mission only to discover the weaknesses that the brunette still has. And now I wonder, why did you guys do such a thing? Issei asked Didraig and Cortana why they did such a thing as studying him in the middle of a deadly mission. Cortana, with a slight sigh, decided to speak frankly, seeing Blizzard and Elsha's expressions, that it was time for her to talk to Issei. Issei, I know you're prepared to face any threat that comes your way, and we've seen that when you've faced criminals, street demons, renegades, fallen angels, or supernatural creatures. But for months now, I've been very concerned about your reliance on the weaponry given to you by the boss. You've neglected other necessary skills, like strategy, the use of the booster gear, and other elements that would allow you to have a counteroffensive in case of emergencies, even if you don't have weapons to fall back on. It's not that we're being harsh, but we had to give you a mission that relied on other skills you've acquired. And we saw that you have strengths but also weaknesses, Issei, Cortana said to Issei in a very harsh and sincere tone. He remained silent, but he kept thinking about how his heavy reliance on weaponry, even if limited, gave him a certain advantage. Although he hated to admit it, she was right that lately he had relied too much on weapons and too little on the booster gear and the use of strategy. I hate to say it, but Cortana is right to scold him on this point, and he saw that Didraig, Elsha, Blizzard, and Cortana all have something planned for the brunette. And that's why you put me on this mission against these creatures. Issei asked his partner again, and she nodded. Yes, and now that we've identified your weaknesses, we can focus again on much more rigorous but comprehensive training for your development as a Spartan Sekiryuutei, Cortana said again, drawing her partner's attention, especially when she said the word training. When the chestnut-haired man saw that his partner was right and that he had to go back to training, he knew that he would have a stressful few months. He had no other option but to resign himself and accept what would have to happen. Well, Cortana, what will this new training you have in mind be like? What do we have to do? Issei asked, already resigned to Cortana and Didraig's guests, who were happy to see that Issei had accepted Cortana's criticisms. Luckily, it was understandable. All right, partner, I'll get back to training with the booster gear and learning how to use it in case you face tougher opponents, Didraig told Issei. For my part, we'll train you in hand-to-hand combat, which you're very weak at. So we'll focus on street fighting and develop a style that's more suitable for fighting if you don't have weapons or ammunition, Blizzard said to the brown-haired man. In my case, we'll train in draconic magic, where I believe you have little experience, so we'll start with the basics, Elsha told Issei. Now, for my part, we need to return to the strategies that I believe you have abandoned, so I will make sure that you remember and can live to tell the tale, Cortana said to Issei. The chestnut-haired man, seeing that he would have a lot to train now with the first users of the booster gear, including Blizzard and Elsha, along with Didraig and Cortana in various areas where he was weak or limited, would have to train hard from now on so that he wouldn't have to repeat the library mission. Well, I think there's a lot to do from now on, Cortana, where do we begin? Issei said, fully accepting the new training he would have from now on. Now Cortana, a little more relieved that her chestnut-haired companion had accepted, would have to ask him for something else and hoped he would agree. Before we begin, Issei, I want to make a bet with you, Cortana proposed, drawing the attention of those involved, especially the brunette. It was very rare for his partner to make a bet. All right, shoot already, Cortana, Issei said seriously. If you complete your training again in 6 months, you'll return to mercenary missions, but if you take longer than necessary, you'll go to Q Academy and graduate there like any teenage boy should. Several months later. 3 months have passed since Spartan Sekiryuutei Issei Hayadu had returned to the training imposed by Cortana, Didraig, Elsha, and Blizzard after his mission that was theoretically successful, but in the end turned out to be disastrous upon seeing the notable weaknesses in the chestnut-haired man. These past months had been hell on earth for Issei, as Cortana and his companions had seriously pushed him through his training until he felt they were squeezing him to his last physical and emotional limits. Where to begin? Let's see. Blizzard was ferocious when it came to training him physically with hand-to-hand combat, which was the most brutal thing Issei had ever felt. From starting with extreme all-day training with physical conditioning to going deep into martial arts, where the brunette adapted to urban marine hand-to-hand combat, which is a variant of mixed martial arts with street fighting. For months, Blizzard showed no mercy to Issei, who was the punching bag where he ended up knocked out or in pain, and he was grateful to himself that he was a dragon because if he were human he would have perished in the first weeks of Blizzard's training. Meanwhile, with Didraig, his partner Draconico resumed training in the use of the booster gear. He noticed that his partner hadn't used his sacred gear much, which worried him. In the worst-case scenario, if he ran out of ammunition, he would have a better option than using the sacred gear against threats far more dangerous than street demons or low-level beings. He intensified this training so that Didraig could use the sacred gear more effectively at any time and in any situation that warranted it. He also worked on mastering the dragon shoot from its lowest to its highest level to inflict maximum damage on his enemies, and on improving the fact that some of his weapons were plasma-based so that their use would be unlimited, much to the relief of the chestnut-haired man. With Elsha, the training was a bit more flexible. She focused on magic handling combined with the booster gear to complement the training. It was a bit more manageable and calm for Issei, having an approachable and easygoing teacher. With Cortana, it was a matter of reviewing planned and improvised strategies for any situation the brunette found himself in. That was the most torturous thing he had to go through with the virtual girl who acted like a captain when it came to giving orders, causing more stress and arguments between Issei and Cortana. And that was only during a long 6 months that Issei had to survive his rigorous training, and worse still, during that time he also couldn't go on requested missions because of his training, which bored Issei even more. He wasn't worried about the money since he had saved a lot from previous missions, but he liked participating in a mission to be able to let off steam by facing any rival. But now he would have to settle for the training he was receiving, which increased in difficulty every day to the point of extreme exhaustion, reaching these necessary cases. Although Issei did everything possible to finish his training during these scheduled 6 months, he was unable to complete it due to his bad luck. He had to pay the bet he made with Cortana, who is very happy to have defeated the Spartans since she wants to give Issei a new direction with a quiet life as a high school student, instead of being a mercenary for hire by the highest bidder. But before Cortana could look up school options in Kyo, an email arrived in her database requesting Issei's mercenary services, causing Cortana to sigh. "Issei, you have devilish luck, we have one last mission to complete," Cortana said to the Spartan, who became excited at the prospect of having missions again. "All right, Cortana, explain what this mission is about," Issei replied cheerfully, happy to see that he would finally have some action after a period of retraining, and now he would put everything he had learned into practice. "This is going to be a bodyguard mission. We have to protect the leader of a supernatural faction called Yasaka and her daughter and heir, Kunu. A battalion of rogue demons and fallen angel deserters has been spotted in their territory planning to attack and kidnap them. We've been informed that we must get there as quickly as possible to stop them," Cortana explained in great detail to Issei, contemplating what he would have to do once they arrived in this territory. He would have to do it his way, quick and trouble-free. "Very well, Cortana, where do we have to go?" Issei finally asked his partner, who was showing a 3-dimensional map displaying the location given to her by the mission requester. To Kyoto, Cortana finally answered Issei, and with his watch on, he activated his Spartan armor again, showing his strong crimson-red armor with the orange visor. Chapter 4, Last Mercenary Adventure and Special Memories. Back at Issei's residence. Back at the residence where Issei Hayaten, the current Sekiryutei and also the new Master Chief, currently lives with his virtual partner Cortana and his partner Didraig, along with Elsha and Blizzard still inside the booster gear. They were in the main room of the brown-haired man since he was supposed to be looking into school, as he had promised to go to school and leave his life as a mercenary. There was no doubt about that on Issei's part, who promised to go since he too needed a necessary break from risky missions, although he would miss the good pay and testing himself against large numbers of enemies that would show his worth as a Spartan. It was no coincidence that he had earned the respect and appreciation of the Angel faction and a certain Seraphina who looked at him in a very angelic way, which gave the Spartan chills since he could not deal with Cortana's notorious jealousy and the constant mockery of Didraig and Elsha. Even the apathetic Blizzard joined in the laughter at Issei's misfortunes. Apparently, their new mission entrusted to them by the supernatural faction of the Yokai and their leader Yasaka and his daughter Kunu are in grave danger due to subsequent threats on the outskirts of the ancient city of Kyoto, Japan. Issei, seeing from the little information given by Cortana that they were a group of rogue demons and fallen angels, was intrigued and caught the Spartans' attention. These enemies were becoming increasingly audacious, which excited Issei even more. And that's why he went to the other room where he gathered some of the arsenal left by his master and decided to take it for his mission in Kyoto. But first he had to activate his armor, and with that in mind, he activated his sacred gear in his left hand, revealing the booster gear and activating his crimson-red Spartan Mjolnir II armor in all its glory. Once inside the armory, I grabbed the essentials like my M6D Magnum pistol from Halo 1 CE, a plasma pistol, a plasma rifle, and finally a couple of necessary extra weapons, a beam rifle, the Covenant sniper rifle, the energy sword, the old reliable, and some plasma grenades. Is it a miracle you didn't take half the arsenal, Issei? Cortana asked attentively, observing the small arsenal her partner love interest had taken this time. Well, since this will be my last mission as a mercenary, this time I want to carry something light, and knowing the situation, I'll need something for close and long-range combat. And who knows, if the situation warrants it, I'll take my sword, but I hope the situation doesn't reach the city of Kyoto, Issei replied to his virtual partner, which surprised her with its explanation for carrying little weaponry. But what caught his attention the most was that Issei wanted to avoid the use of weapons as much as possible in case the situation in Kyoto reached extremes. It seems she changed a lot in the simulated mission a few months ago. This was good. She is improving just as she wanted, as well as Elsha, Didraig, and Blizzard. I'm glad to know you're already making the right decisions, Issei. I'm sure everything will be alright if we have a solid strategy to protect the Yaokai girls, Cortana said to her companion, reassuring him that everything would be fine. Thank you, Cortana. You always manage to calm me down in good times. I'm glad to have you as a partner, Issei said to his partner, and the latter blushed at the comment of the brown-haired boy, and luckily for her, they could not see her blush, but they could see a certain dragon. Well, it's best if we leave now, and don't worry, I've already set your GPS to the direction towards Kyoto, Cortana said, showing Issei's helmet visor a three-dimensional map of his current location from Kyoto towards Kyoto. And according to Cortana's precise data, the journey would take at least 2 hours. But with Didraig's wings and some support from his jetpack integrated into his armor, he could arrive a little sooner. Very well, Cortana, it's time to depart for our mission, Issei said, stowing his elite weapons in a compartment of his armor. He then headed for the roof of his house, and with no one watching, he took off in a flash, wings outstretched, flying westward. You'd better land properly, Issei. I don't want you to copy the boss's bad habit, Cortana said to the brunette in a scolding tone, recalling the crazy experiences the virtual girl had had when her previous partner landed abruptly. Don't worry, Cortana, I'll land fine this time as long as there are no weather problems, Issei said, reassuring Cortana again and allaying her concerns about forced landings. Although he managed to calm the virtual girl, she still had her worries. Well, we'll see when we get to Kyoto. I've already put the exact location into your GPS to get to the city entrances. At least we'll avoid attracting attention, Cortana said, placing a red dot on the map in Issei's visor. Understood, it's time to go, Issei said, starting to fly upwards after taking a great leap. Once it had reached a considerable altitude, about 1,000 meters, it began flying west as indicated by the GPS. Seeing that it could arrive sooner, it began to accelerate. Cortana, let me know when we arrive in Kyoto, Issei said to Cortana, who nodded in response to her partner's request. Understood, Issei, Cortana replied, also attentive since the trip would be a bit long. And just like her, along with Didraig, Blizzard, and Elsha, are also interested in what their chestnut-haired companion will do in the land of Yaokai. Several hours later. After 4 hours of flying at high speed, Issei, with guidance from Cortana and Didraig on his way to Kyoto, was able to avoid colliding with commercial airliners near the airspace and the occasional bird or group of flocks of these feathered animals flying in the opposite direction to the Spartan. While taking advantage of the trip, she put on some music to make the journey less boring, playing some well-known songs like Come Get to Love, which she chose because of Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 1 and others less well-known, which at least distracted her virtual companion from the constant scolding from the brunette. After finishing the last song Issei had, he could see what appeared to be the city of Kyoto a few kilometers away. The city's surroundings were surrounded by a lush forest, giving it the image of a green and ecological city, something that Issei and Cortana liked very much. Wow, Kyoto looks beautiful, Cortana said, since where she lived there were hardly any forests with that appearance. I didn't expect Cortana either. I'm often amazed by the cities I explore, and so far I've liked Kyoto. It would be a good place to rest, Issei said with a slight smile, thinking of a well-deserved rest for himself and his friends. Well, if one day you're offered the chance to live in a relaxing place like Kyoto, don't pass it up and accept it. I'm sure a change of scenery will do you good, Cortana told her companion, who made a mental note to keep it in mind. Don't misunderstand, for the brown-haired boy, Kyoto will always be his home, the place where he was born, grew up with his biological parents, where he met his childhood friend Irina, and where he had a new beginning in life when he was found in the woods by his master, the chief master, and Cortana. He will always treasure those memories, although there are also times when he will seek new paths, such as moving to another city. But for now, that will remain in place in his hometown. After all, a Spartan Sekiryuutei is needed to protect both the humans and the supernatural that are worth living for. Speaking of that, the brown-haired man was already starting to remember a certain mission he had had weeks before. Cortana, let me know when we arrive in Kyoto so we can land in a hidden location. Issei asked his virtual partner, who nodded, looking a little puzzled. Okay, Issei, Cortana said as she began to chat with D-Drain and its former users Elsha and Blizzard. While the virtual girl was talking in Issei's subconscious with the other users, Issei began to remember the recent mission he had weeks ago. It certainly brought back some good memories. Flashback start. Weeks earlier, after the library simulation mission. He still remembered his penultimate mission very well, and was beginning to recall the mission he'd had weeks earlier after Cortana had given him a grueling test mission in the simulator, where he'd had to relearn the most essential skills. This had happened weeks before, after he'd completed his training with her, D-Drake, and the other booster gear users. This mission, approved by Cortana herself, involved reading a request for help from another faction that urgently needed his assistance. And it wasn't the biblical factions asking for help, but rather the Norse faction, which was asking the Spartan to fight against creatures called Dark Elves, a dangerous race for the Norse who had caused problems for centuries. Although the Norse had managed to exterminate most of their leaders, and much of their civilization, there were some surviving remnants led by officers and trusted men of the high command of the Dark Elves. These three managed to gather a fairly large contingent of those dark creatures along with Satyr's corrupted elves and some disaffected ice giants who were against the Asgardians, and these three had only one thing in mind: the complete destruction of Asgard. Therefore, in this situation, Issei, along with the Valkyrie Rossweisse and some Asgardians, including Valkyries and Norsemen, would provide support should the mission spiral out of control. Issei, along with the Norse leaders, including Odin and his son Thor, the god of thunder, reached an agreement regarding payment and the strategic plan to avoid collateral damage in Asgard. A few days after Cortana readjusted the plan, Issei and Rossweisse would be the first to launch the first attack, causing serious damage to the Dark Elves and their followers. The vanguard would be followed by the other Valkyries and Asgardians, and finally Odin and Thor would form the rearguard in case the entire clan went to hell. And a few days later the operation began, starting with a direct attack by the Sekiryuutei with his plasma weapons, causing serious damage to the first attackers, elves and satyrs, who were caught by surprise by the Spartans' attack. And they could not recover in a few minutes because the silver-haired Valkyrie attacked forcefully with one of her magic attacks, creating an offensive barrier that swept away a large part of the satyrs who had come as reinforcements for the fallen elves and a part of the ice giants, leaving him in critical condition. After eliminating a large part of Malekith's forces, the current leader of the Dark Elf remnants emerged to begin fighting the Spartan and the Valkyrie, while those who remained standing began fighting against the reinforcements of Issei and Rossweisse, and a pitched battle began between both factions. But thanks to Cortana's recommended strategies and the brutality that the Nords are known for, they crushed the Dark Elves and their allies in a matter of hours, who collapsed in the first hours of the fight. Malekith tried to flee the place, but fell in combat after being pierced in the back by a red sword and the gaze of the visor of the Spartan Sekiryuutei, where he odorlessly decapitated the leader of these dark creatures. After their leader fell, the few remaining members perished upon seeing their leader dead, thus ending the victory for the Norsemen. They returned to Valhalla to celebrate a well-deserved victory with few casualties to lament on the part of the Norse faction. Sometime after the battle, as promised by Odin, he paid the Spartan what he had promised, and thanked him on behalf of his entire faction for the determination and leadership he had shown. Although Odin, the god of all fathers, could also notice the sidelong glance of his faithful Valkyrie, who couldn't clear her eyes from the Spartan, giving him a somewhat mischievous smile, and he told her that later they would contact Rossweisse in Kyoto, which made the silver-haired girl and the brunette blush a little because of what Odin said. But not only him, Cortana was also consumed by jealousy over what that one-eyed old man said to his companion, and that Valkyrie of course not. She won't allow Issei to interact with her. She already couldn't tolerate Issei getting close to a certain seraphim, and now with her that made her a furious woman, and the complete opposite was true of Daedrag, along with Elsha and Blizzard. Once the alliance treaty between the Norse and the Spartan was finalized, Issei returned to Kyoto to resume his training with Cortana, who once again scolded him, this time for flirting with bitter Valkyries, interacting with barbaric and brutal beings, and the constant mockery from Daedrag and company regarding Issei's misfortune. End of flashback. While Issei was still thinking about a certain Valkyrie, a voice interrupted him, much to his dismay. Well, partner, I'm sorry to interrupt your thoughts, but we'll soon be entering Yaokai territory. You'd better land at the city entrance and change your appearance, Didraig said to both his companion and Cortana, who accepted the red dragon's attention. Understood, Cortana and Issei said in unison, which caused giggles from the dragon and its users who were also trying to contain their laughter at the synchronicity between the Sekiryuutei and the female AI. And they could see in the distance a complex of forest where it could land safely, much to Cortana's delight. And instantly Is began to slow down in its flight, and fold its wings to land smoothly and directly into the woods, where it landed without attracting the attention of either the inhabitants of Kyoto or the living beings that inhabit this sacred place for the Yauk. Once he landed in the forest, Is deactivated his balance breaker and Spartan armor, revealing his normal appearance as an 18-year-old, dressed in a white t-shirt with an image of a flying eagle, a black hooded sweatshirt, denim jeans, and black athletic shoes. Imagine Desmond Miles' appearance in his Assassin's Creed Revelations outfit. Well, we've arrived in Kyoto. Anything to report, Cortana? Didraig. Is asked his companions in an orderly tone as he left the forest and headed towards the entrance of Kyoto City. Nothing to report, Issei, Cortana replied to her companion, confirming there were no threats in the area, prompting a sigh of relief from the brown-haired boy. Clear, partner. Didraig also responded, sensing almost no presence of the Yaukais. All right, I can see the city a few kilometers away. Keep me updated if there are any animals in my area, Issei said to his companions as he discreetly stored his portable weapons in his jacket and jeans pockets, leaving the handle of his deactivated energy saber slightly exposed, giving the appearance of a metallic ornament hanging on Issei's belt. Understood, agreed, Cortana and Didraig both responded to Issei, and he continued his journey, leaving the dense forest at once to head towards the entrance of the urbanized and advanced city of Kyoto. Once Issei entered the city, his first thought was to seek information from the locals, who gladly directed him to the old city of Kyoto, located to the west, where the architecture of feudal Japan with modern touches remains intact. They recommended that the brunette take the Bullied train, which is just a few meters from the city's historic center. Issei agreed and boarded the subway just as any passerby would. After about 5 minutes of having taken the Bullied train, Issei arrived at the station where 100 meters away the old city of Kyoto would be. As he told the citizens, it began with the entrance of ruby-red torii gates and stone stairs welcoming the chestnut-haired boy and his companions. While I must admit Kyoto has managed to surprise me, anything to report? Issei said, asking his companions if there were any creatures now that he was in Yaokai territory. He expected a welcoming committee from them. Nothing yet, Issei, Cortana replied simply to her companion, seeing that there was no anomaly. Nothing to report either, partner, Didraig replied, backed up by both Elsha and Blizzard in the face of the Red Dragon's suspicions. Okay, it would be best if I ventured deeper into your town and bought some souvenirs, Issei said to himself as he walked up the steps of the old town, observing some citizens dressed in elegant kimonos, while the women wore more modern clothing and all the inhabitants gave the brown-haired boy a warm welcome. As he continued walking, he didn't realize he was being watched by two fox-like creatures, one the size of an adult dog with golden blonde fur and a bushy tail, and the other, apparently its cub, with reddish-blonde fur. Both nodded as they moved away to continue investigating the individual who had entered their territory. Half an hour later, back with Issei, he continued walking through the city while still searching for the pair of Yaokai kitsunes who had hired him for protection, but he had no trace of them, and he decided to sit on a bench that was near a water fountain, where he enjoyed the atmosphere in Kyoto. Well, I still haven't found any trace of the Yaokai, but I can wait because I want to keep exploring this city. I still have the Golden Pavilion to explore, Issei thought, but he couldn't continue because he sensed two powerful presences, one that was on par with the Archangel Michael and the Seraph Gabriel and the god of war Odin. Are you new to this city, young tourist? Asked a delicate and respectful voice with a feminine tone, which made Issei turn around and look at what had distracted him, and he was surprised by what he saw from the chestnut tree. The first was a beautiful young woman with a voluptuous figure and very long blonde hair that reached her back and golden eyes. Her facial features were delicate, and her eyebrows were very short and rounded, a symbol of nobility. Her attire consisted of a yellow kimono, a gold obi, and a black petticoat with gold skulls and printed lines. The kimono had a white lining and was open at the shoulders, revealing her ample, somewhat exposed bust. Her hair was held in place by a traditional hair ornament with 6 gold bira kanzashi and several red kanzashi, along with traditional purple sandals. The second woman was a beautiful teenager of about 14 or 15 years old, with the appearance of an elementary school student. She had golden blonde hair tied in a ponytail and matching eyes. Her attire consisted of a traditional Miko outfit and high geta sandals with white tabi. The sleeves of her Hayori featured a giant red star-shaped pentagram, surrounded by 5 smaller pentagrams between the dots, and she wore a pair of traditional sandals. Imagine the physical appearances of certain kitsune yaokai from DxD Hero in chapters 2 through 6. Well, it's my first time in Kyoto, and I liked it so much that I got a little pensive, miss. Issei replied with a slight smile, smiling back at the older blonde while the younger blonde looked at him cautiously. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying your stay in Kyoto. My daughter and I are also enjoying a morning stroll. Would you like to join us? The blonde woman politely asked Issei, addressing the forgotten brown-haired boy who didn't know the name, which made him feel a little embarrassed. I'm Hyaodu Issei Hyaodu, and yes, I'd like to accompany you. There are still places I haven't seen, and I'd appreciate it if you could tell me more about their history. Issei replied respectfully to both women, who smiled slightly, seeing how friendly and sociable the boy was. All right, follow me, Issei-san. The Golden Pavilion is just a few meters away and the Symphony Temple is on the other side, said the blonde woman as she invited the brown-haired boy to accompany them toward the Grand Monument. As they walked, Issei noticed the presence of both women, who remained calm and in perfect harmony, as if they were trying to say that they were allies, something that relieved Issei since he didn't sense anything dark about the two blondes. Perhaps she could help him in his search for his contacts. By the way, miss, you also haven't introduced me to your name and your daughter's name if it's not too much trouble, Issei asked again to the blonde, who gave a friendly smile to the brown-haired man. I'm Yasaka and this is my daughter Kanu. Yasaka answered the call to Issei, nodding as he got a better look at Kanu, who was comfortable by his side and gave him a friendly smile. And the moment he heard the women's names, Issei was quite surprised to learn that they were the women who had hired him for protection. But he remained calm so as not to draw attention to himself, not to frighten the women. For now, he would play along and try to get to know the clients of his protection service better. Okay, I wasn't expecting this surprise, but I still need to maintain a normal appearance so as not to attract attention. All right, Miss Yasaka and Kanu-san, we'd better hurry, Issei said calmly, continuing his walk with both yaokai towards the place he wanted to visit. Several minutes later, after walking towards the Golden Pavilion, Issei noticed that both the mother and daughter were a little thirsty, and since he had accompanied them, he decided to treat them to food and drinks. He even saw a vending machine selling a traditional Japanese drink called ramyun and some fast food stalls set up by chance along his route. Miss Yasaka and Kanu, would you like a dish with ramyun? Issei asked the blondes, and they noticed the boy's kindness and sincerity and decided to accept. Yes, Issei-san. Yasaka and her daughter Kanu answered in unison to the brown-haired man, where he went to place the orders. He had to ask Cortana and Elsha for some tips on what the girls would like to try, and they recommended something light and mild. He followed their advice and ordered a couple of dangos for Yasaka, green tea ice cream for Kanu, and a couple of yakitori for himself. As for ramyun drinks, he ordered raspberry for Yasaka, melon for Kanu, and lemon lime for Issei. Note, my favorite drink is lemon lime V. Once the food and drinks were ordered, Issei, Yasaka, and Kanu went to a small table where they began to eat their meals in a relaxed and pleasant atmosphere. Issei found Yasaka and Kanu to be pleasant companions who provided good conversation during their walks and when she showed him around. He had to admit that Yasaka was just as beautiful as the Seraphina Gabriel and the Valkyrie Rossweisse. He also acknowledged that his virtual companion Cortana and his spirit companion Elsha were beautiful as well. As for the kitsunes, Yasaka had also sensed the boy's presence as a potential threat and had already planned to attack them once he entered their territory. However, upon meeting and speaking with him, she could feel his peaceful and calm presence, which led her to abandon her attack upon realizing he posed no danger. Nevertheless, she was intrigued that this rather young man possessed such power, and she wondered if he was a sacred gear user or belonged to a faction. She hoped it was the Spartan Sekiryuutei who had hired her for his and his daughter's safety. So far, she had enjoyed the boy's company and liked his personality. He wasn't like the apathetic and serious yaokai companions who inhabited her territory, nor was he like many perverted and degenerate men. The boy displayed tranquility, serenity, and formality. Although surprised by his young age, he showed good maturity both physically and mentally. However, she was intrigued by the power embodied in him and hoped he was either someone neutral or the long-awaited ally she had hired, because her life and her daughters were increasingly endangered. So Issei-san, how have you been during your stay in Kyoto? Yasaka asked as she ate the dango in gentle bites. I had a great time, Miss Yasaka. Kyoto surprised me with its beauty in many ways, Issei replied to the blonde, continuing to eat with both kitsune yaokai. And what do you think of the atmosphere in Kyoto, Issei-san? Kanu asked the brunette beside her as she drank from the ramyun bottle. I must admit that the people of Kyoto are very nice. I like how calm, kind, and social they are. I even feel like I'm at home in Kyoto, Issei replied again as he finished his food and his ramyun. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying it, young Issei, and I must also thank you for inviting us to eat these dishes, Yasaka said, tasting the last dango on his chopstick. It was nothing. You guys have done so much for me as my guides on this quick tour. I really appreciated how you explained so many things about Kyoto that I didn't know. It was a way of saying thank you, and besides, it's always nice to invite people out for a meal outdoors. That way we can get to know them better, Issei said, finishing his meal and his ramyun drink with a smile that Yasaka liked because of his sincerity and the boy's calm demeanor. Kanu also felt comfortable being by his side. Since the three of us are here, would you like to tell me something about yourself briefly, young Issei? Yasaka asked, now a little more interested in Issei and hoped to learn more about the boy, but this time in a positive way. Well, I'll try to be as brief as possible, Miss Yasaka, Issei said, knowing he should omit many things from his life as a mercenary. For several minutes, Issei was able to tell her that he was an orphan, but that he now had his own house and a comfortable livelihood, that he currently lived in Kyoto City, Japan, and was already planning to return to school because of a promise he made to a friend, Cortana, and also to continue his life as a good man according to Master Chief. All this while the brunette was telling them, the blondes were surprised by the dreams and the life that the boy had to endure, and there they had him, a boy who matured a lot and had achieved the impossible to get ahead and live peacefully. It was very rarely seen in men nowadays, and it was something that Yasaka liked while Kanu also liked how Issei was. May I ask you something, Miss Yasaka? Issei asked respectfully to Yasaka as the brunette had noticed something and wanted to know what it was. Come in, Issei-san, Yasaka replied with a slight smile to the young brunette. And her husband? Issei asked cautiously since he hadn't seen the kitsune's father and husband. In response to Issei's question, Yasaka and Kanu both wore expressions of sadness that Issei easily noticed, hitting himself on the head for how reckless he had been. Oops, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to be so reckless, Issei said apologetically, but Yasaka wouldn't allow it. Don't worry, Issei-san, since you've told us about your life, you have the right to know what happened. My husband was a kitsune yokai, one of the most powerful members they ever had. His name was Narud. He was both my husband and the father of my daughter, Kanu. He died a long time ago in battle from a fatal arrow wound to the heart. It's presumed he was killed by an assassin during that battle. And before he died, he entrusted me with the mantle of the new yokai leader, Yasaka replied with a sad smile, which was also shared by her daughter, who felt a little bad that Issei was bringing up that painful family moment. I'm truly sorry for asking that, Miss Yasaka and young Kanu. I know it's painful to remember that moment, but I imagine you lived as best you could to have the best moments by his side. And that's what matters, moving forward with your lives, Issei said, encouraging the kitsunes about what had happened with their former husband-father, and they realized they should continue with their lives. And before Yasaka could say anything, both she and Issei sensed several presences within 100 meters of each other in the park, and all of them were hostile and negative, directed towards her and her daughter Kanu. They could also choose the number of types that were on Issei's side. He could visualize about 5 to 10 low and low mid-level demons, and they were all street demons. Each of them was surrounding the yokai pair, and Issei was beginning to plan a strategy to finish them off quickly. The problem would be the inconvenience of crossfire that would harm them and the inhabitants of Kyoto if these demons started attacking. Miss Yasaka, do you know we're being surrounded by annoying bats? Issei asked Yasaka sarcastically, hinting at the impending threat. Of course, Issei-san, I'm surprised you sensed it so quickly before I did. I suppose you have an emergency plan. Yasaka asked Issei, who nodded slightly so as not to worry Kanu. I have her, but I need her to be protected. I don't want her to get hurt for any reason. If she can defend herself, now's the time, Issei advised Yasaka, who nodded. Even though she was a priestess, she also knew how to defend herself and wouldn't let anyone endanger the lives of her daughter and her people. I can defend myself, Issei-san. I won't let anyone hurt my daughter or my village, Yasaka replied, showing a bit of her power, leaving Issei somewhat surprised by the power displayed by the blonde yokai. I'm glad to hear it, Miss Yasaka. I just ask that you don't watch what's about to happen. Kanu-san, if I were you, I'd close your eyes. Don't worry, this will be over in a minute, Issei told Yasaka, asking her daughter not to be traumatized by what she was about to see. And Yasaka, noticing Issei's seriousness and determination, agreed as she took her daughter's arm and asked him more calmly to close his eyes so as not to see the carnage that was coming their way. And Kanu reluctantly had to accept and closed her eyes, hoping it would all be over. It's time to work, Issei said, activating his sacred gear in full view of the yokai, who were stunned to see one of the 13 Longinus in first person. Perhaps that was responsible for such power emanating from the young man. And they could not remain more astonished as they saw that his sacred gear began to shine from the green jewel on his gauntlet, and it began to envelop the brown-haired man in red armor with his distinctive helmet with orange glass. Imagine Tony Stark's transformation with his nanotechnology armor from Avengers 3, Infinity War. Issei, now wearing his Spartan armor with his sacred gear activated in his hand, decided to use the first attack with a smaller-scale dragon shot in his direction to the north, where he detected a large number of those hidden street demons. And instantly after the first shot of the attack, which swept away a large number of demons. That sudden attack came from the very demon of demons. Right before their eyes appeared Spartan Sekiryuutei, the most feared man in all the supernatural realms. Since the massacre he perpetrated in Italy and the slaughter of the Dark Elves in Northern Europe, he has instilled a great sense of terror in criminals, be they street demons, fallen angels, deserters, exorcists, or criminals. Anyone who fell under his scrutiny was a dead man. For 60 seconds, it was a nightmare for the small skirmish of street demons that could be heard in the distance from those who unfortunately survived Issei's first dragon shoot attack. Plasma shot attacks, where the moans and pleas of the demons could be heard as their flesh was penetrated by the plasma shots. They were luckier to die quickly than with what followed. The few remaining survivors were swiftly finished off by the energy sword, which emitted a blood-red glow due to D-Drake's influence, causing the last demons of the skirmish to agonize. Luckily, it all ended in a minute, just as Issei said, just as he could choose to have his dragon shoot at 5% of its power, as he wanted to avoid collateral damage on the outskirts of the city. Seeing that everything was over after this small skirmish, Issei returned to where Yasaka and Kanu were, where they had taken refuge from other yokai in the form of crows and humans with animal masks and armed with swords. "Okay, Miss Yasaka, the emergency is over," Issei said to the yokai, who nodded slightly. "This isn't over yet, Issei-san. We still have a bat watching us by fair fire," Yasaka said, creating several orbs of blue fire and launching them towards the treetops where a small bat was located. Upon seeing the fire spheres, the bat tried to flee, but he was surrounded and instantly incinerated, leaving nothing but ashes in the place. "Now we can take a breather, Issei-san, or should I call you young Spartan Sekiryuutei?" Yasaka said to Issei, who removed his helmet, revealing his face again. "I also didn't expect my client to be able to defend herself very well, Miss Yasaka," Issei said to Yasaka, who smiled a little sheepishly, while Kanu opened her eyes upon seeing that there was no longer any danger and could see the boy who had saved them, and it was none other than the Spartan. "Yufufu. I didn't expect you to be the mercenary I hired. I must admit that your strength and your legend are true. You are the Red Spartan," said a surprised Kanu, blushing slightly at seeing the Spartan in person, and before Issei could continue talking to the Yaokai Kitsunes, one of the guards approached their leader respectfully. "Yasaka-sama, your safety and Kanu-sama's are still at risk. We need to escort you and the Spartan to the safety of the temple," the crow-headed yokai respectfully requested. "All right, guard. I want security doubled all around Kyoto with 24-hour surveillance," Yasaka said, ordering his guard, who nodded and signaled to the other guards to double the city's security. As the guards left, the few remaining royal guards escorted the Kitsunes to Issei, where he decided to put on his helmet. "It would be best if you updated me on the situation, Miss Yasaka," Issei respectfully asked Yasaka, wanting to know who he was dealing with, knowing that this small skirmish was just the tip of the iceberg. "And I'll give it to you, Issei-san, and from there we'll negotiate your service quota as a mercenary," Yasaka replied calmly to the chestnut-haired man. And both continued their journey towards the temple and home where both Yasaka and Kanu lived. And luckily for the three of them, the journey to the temple was better, where there were no more problems. As he traveled through the interior of Kyoto, Issei noticed that some areas of Kyoto, inhabited by both humans and yokai, had been damaged. He saw that they had been suffering attacks from these demons for some time. The brown-haired boy hoped that his intervention would change things for the better for Kyoto. Several hours later, at the Symphonist Temple in Kyoto. Back at the temple, the yokai faction's headquarters and home to Yasaka and her daughter Kanu, they were escorted to a location heavily guarded by yokai and Shinto monks. Inside were their leader, his daughter, several high-ranking members of the yokai faction, and of course the Spartan Sekiryuutei, still wearing his red Spartan armor. They were all sitting on a tatami mat where he was explaining the situation, which was quite murky. A battalion of fewer than 150 street demons of the worst kind, stationed a few kilometers outside Kyoto, are hiding within the forests of this sacred city, awaiting the assault. Considering the situation, Issei proposed to Yasaka and members of different yokai clans that he would take care of the problem, if they attacked quickly and decisively, something he was an expert at in the annihilation of demons. While the yokai and Shinto warrior monks who were able to fight, they would defend the city at all costs in case he failed in his elimination of demons, and of course also after the evacuation of civilians to avoid collateral damage. The agreed-upon payment for the services provided by the Spartan Sekiryuutei was also revealed, amounting to over $100,000 for the complete elimination of this threat and the protection of Yasaka and her daughter Kanu. Both Yasaka and Issei agreed to the payment, while Issei agreed to protect the girls during his stay in Kyoto. Once the deal was agreed upon, Issei settled into a room near Yasaka and Kanu to defend them in case assassins infiltrated. Fortunately, the situation didn't escalate, much to the relief of the yokai and the Spartan himself. The next day, Kyoto, Japan's 7 a.m. Back in the traditional city of Kyoto, Japan, on the outskirts of the city, Issei stood in his Spartan armor, armed with his plasma rifle, beam rifle, and energy sword. He was ready for the next carnage that awaited him. He was prepared to face the group of street demons, most of whom were low mid, or mid-level, no problem for the brown-haired warrior. And thanks to Cortana and D-Drake, he was able to detect that there was a trio of other mid to high-level demons. He had already planned a way to eliminate these officers and the rest of their troops. First, he had to take out the ringleaders. Without them, the group would fall apart without leaders, and from there they would be like fish in a barrel. And with fewer than 100 street demons on the outskirts of the city, it would take him less than an hour to finish them off. This, on the one hand, while he was on the mission, he had made it clear that with the other yokai who could fight in case he failed, they should protect the city and Miss Yasaka and her daughter Kanu at any cost. Hoping everything would go well, Issei stealthily slipped within a few meters of the camp where dozens of street demons were armed with traditional and ranged weapons, and others with very primitive weapons. He was able to use his visor to detect the 3 highest-ranking demons in this group. Noticing that the first high-ranking demon was sharpening his curved sword with some stones, Issei wasted no time and used his beam rifle, aiming it at the demon's temple. He was able to calculate the distance, humidity, and temperature. Luckily, the wind was calm, allowing him to make his next move. Once in firing position, Issei took a deep breath with each heartbeat, relaxing his pulse to prepare for the shot. And he counted to 1 to 2 and 3, gently squeezing the trigger. And in a millisecond, the plasma blast extinguished the demon's life force, killing him instantly as he fell face up before the eyes of the other demons who saw their fallen officer. The instant he approached the demon's body, a crimson-red grenade fell at the feet of most of the demons. And upon seeing what energy grenade it released, they turned pale with terror upon learning what kind of grenade it was. Issei's draconic energy-infused plasma grenade, and the instant they tried to escape, the device exploded in a killing radius of over 50 meters, killing most of the demons with the shockwave and the explosion itself. Seeing that a quarter of the group had managed to survive the grenade explosion, the Spartan wasted no more time, holding the plasma rifle in his left hand and his energy sword in his right, both emanating an intense crimson-red color. When Issei saw the few who were trying to flee, he decided to use Cortana and D-Drake's strategy simultaneously. Use more strategy to finish them off quickly, and D-Drake's with force, where he unfurled his dragon wings from his back. And at great speed he began to massacre the few remaining survivors, hearing from several kilometers away the gunshots, the slashing of flesh, and the cries of supplication and pleas for help from the demons who hoped that this stormy nightmare would end. Half an hour later. Even amidst the carnage created by the Spartan, the brown-haired man hadn't noticed that there was a red sphere watching him, and it decided to create a small sphere of fire, launching it indiscriminately at the Spartan's back. He stopped for a minute, feeling a small sting on his armor and a slight bruise on his armor, but he couldn't deny he felt a light blow on his back. What's more, it felt like the impact of a bullet, but burning at great speed. Cortana, D-Drake, report if there's anyone else hiding, Issei ordered, readjusting his armor and noticing that there was no serious damage, only superficial injuries. Negative, Issei. Cortana replied, noticing a slight bruise on the back of the armor's structure. Nothing to report either, partner, replied D-Drake, although with some caution since he knew what was happening and decided to lie to his partner and virtual companion for the time being. Actually, he did know what was happening, but he decided not to tell Issei so he could focus on the mission. When things calmed down, he would explain what had happened. Neither Issei nor Cortana would understand what was going on. Only he and his other companions, Elsha and Blizzard, would. What the two of them didn't know was that 2 lights, 1 red and 1 blue, were attacking each other without either of them realizing that they were certain spiritual creatures fighting among themselves. While that was happening, Issei continued killing the last opponents with his plasma rifle, riddling them with bullets quickly, and the last demon who tried to attack him with a pair of swords, he dodged without any problem and in a zigzag movement severed his head with a slash, ending his miserable life. Upon seeing the new carnage he had caused, Issei was cautious, wondering if everyone was already dead. Cortana, report if there are any more survivors, Issei ordered his virtual partner, and she checked to see if there were any more survivors. We have one, but it's not a demon or a fallen angel, it's a human. Anything else to report? Is he an ally or an enemy? Issei asked, noticing the lookout at a distance. Enemy? He was watching us from a considerable distance, taking notes with binoculars. Apparently he was the lookout giving orders from his superiors. Cortana replied again when she saw that the subject was trying to flee. Without flinching, Issei again took his beam rifle from his back, pointing it at the lookout's torso. Don't worry, this man won't live to tell about what he's seen, Issei replied, firing a long-range shot from his rifle towards the subject's torso, killing him instantly and leaving a large opening in his torso. Cortana, seeing that the watchman was dead, was now sure that it was all over. It's over, Issei. I scanned the place, it's all finished, Cortana told her partner, who simply stowed his beam rifle on his back, leaving the place littered with severed, riddled, or shredded bodies due to the grenade explosion. And just like Cortana, D-Drake had also noticed that the red and blue lights began to dissipate, with the blue light prevailing over the red, causing a slight smile on the red dragon's face. After leaving the place, Issei returned to the temple where Yasaka was, along with Kanu and some leaders who were protecting her, notifying them that everything was over. The threat of the street demons was over, a victory for the Yokai with the help of the Spartan, and they breathed a sigh of relief that months of nightmares of night and morning attacks by the demons had finally ended. Yasaka handed him a briefcase containing $100 bills, part of the promised $100,000 which Issei accepted. There was also another kind of proposal made to Issei and the Yokai, an alliance between him and his faction so that in case of an emergency like this or worse, his services would be available to fight in their favor. He still wants to maintain his neutrality, something Yasaka had accepted. Issei had already done a lot, and he accepted the neutrality shown by the Spartan. Shortly after signing the alliance between Issei and Yasaka, he said goodbye to both blondes. Kanu gave him a warm hug which made the teenage Kitsune very happy, while Yasaka also gave him a warm hug which Issei liked except for Cortana and promised to return soon. Now a vacation trip to Kyoto. With nothing else to do, Issei said goodbye to the Kitsunes and began his return to Kyoto, where he once again had to deal with the obvious jealousy of his partner Cortana and the teasing of D-Drake, Elsha, and Blizzard. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Kyoto. HMPH, what a waste of time and investment hiring street demons, said a male voice, looking at the pile of demon bodies while picking up a small notebook left behind by the dead lookout. Luckily, no one said that we were the ones who sent him, said a female voice that looked sadly at the place filled with death. HMPH, whatever. Let's see if the lookout wrote anything useful, said the male subject, not caring about their lives, while reading what the lookout had written and seeing who was responsible for the massacre and the obvious failure of these inept people, he destroyed the notebook. What's going on? The woman asked, noticing the angry expression on his face as he read the lookout's notebook. Nothing, I just know that the ghost Spartan has arrived again to ruin the plans, he replied sarcastically to the woman, annoyed by his companion's sarcasm. In short, we consider the Kyoto expedition a failure and return to base to report what happened. No way, Jean Dark, you'll go investigate this guy where he lives and what his affiliations are with any faction and find out how to blackmail him, the man ordered the woman who was clearly annoyed. You know this will be impossible, Cao Cao. This man is a ghost himself, it's impossible to know who he is since his presence is impossible to create. Don't ask for miracles, the woman replied irritably, which angered Cao Cao even more, knowing that finding the Spartan's Sekiryuutei was impossible. Knowing that the Kyoto expedition was a complete failure, they both left the place to return to their base, hoping that a certain individual would not interfere with their future plans.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.